Chapter 406. Murong-do, how can you talk to your brother-in-law like that? Pay attention to your propriety. A middle-aged man who looked similar to Murong-do scolded him, but his voice was not strict at all, as if he was indulging him. Li Fan understood that although this person seemed to be scolding him, he was actually indulging him. And this person called Murong-do should be Murong-ying's cousin. Forgive me for being rude, but I just can't stand to see someone being presumptuous in our Murong house. Murong-do's body was strong, and his appearance was also dignified. His words were filled with sharpness, which was even colder than the cold wind outside the window. You're just a parasite that lives on Murong's breath. What qualifications do you have to sit there? Murong-do pointed at Li Fan's nose and fiercely ridiculed him. You're only fit to stand at the side, do you know that? If it was a normal day, Murong-do would definitely be unhappy when someone said such words during the New Year's Eve dinner. But today, Murong-do did not say a word. Murong-ying frowned. She originally planned to reprimand this unruly cousin, but Li Fan smiled and cupped his hands towards this Murong-do. This is cousin Murong-do, right? Yes, but is my name something that you can call? Murong-do arrogantly said, You're only fit to call me Lord. Parasite. Okay, Lord, I'm just curious, why haven't I heard of Lord's name in the Jianghu? Li Fan asked, This one is untalented, but after roaming the Jianghu, I only got the humble name Little Overlord. But for such a powerful person like Lord Murong-do, you must have some kind of name, right? Why don't you tell me about it so that I can admire you? Murong-do choked for a moment. Where did he get his name from? There was no such name in the Jianghu. As for Li Fan, no matter what, his title of Little Overlord was well known. Brother-in-law, how did you repel the Lord of Golden Eagle Castle, Yin Wuchao? Can you tell me about it? Murong said with a smile. I like listening to brother-in-law talk about this. It's just a narrow victory. Castle Master Yin went easy on me. It's not worth mentioning. Li Fan said humbly. Oh right, I wonder how many moves cousin brother can take with Castle Master Yin? Murong asked again. Oh, I'm sorry, I said something wrong. I forgot that Castle Master Yin is also a big shot. He disdains sparring with his cousin. Murong blushed, I just didn't have the chance to spar with Yin Wuchao. He, this old fellow, was also a person who deceived the world to gain fame. Leave it to me, I'll beat him until he's looking for his teeth all over the floor. That sounds amazing. Cousin brother's mouth is too amazing. Murong gave him a thumbs up with a face full of admiration. Li Fan, if you have the guts, let's spar now. I'll let you know what a Murong family's martial artist is. I'm sorry, Lord Cousin. The martial artist's rule is that no fighting is allowed at the end of the year. Li Fan rejected the evil dragon Murong's challenge. I think you're just a coward who doesn't dare to accept the challenge. Murong immediately mocked. Whatever Lord Cousin says, I'll do it. Li Fan didn't seem to be angry. In order to resist his inner demon, he could still control this little bit of emotion. Trash. Murong sneered, but Murong-bo slapped the table. He finally shut his mouth. You young people always like to be competitive. I understand that you're young and hot-tempered. Murong-bo said slowly, there's a chance for you to show your hot-bloodedness. Li Fan pricked up his ears, as if he had something to announce. The Murong family should know this tradition. It's a cliché. Murong-bo said with a smile, this year's 8 immortals crossing the sea will depend on the ability of the young people. 8 immortals crossing the sea. What's that? Li Fan directly transmitted his voice and asked his fiancée, who was sitting next to Murong-bo. You'll know when the time comes. Murong-ying also transmitted her voice back, a very boring program. Come on, my children. After eating the dumplings, the rest of the time is yours. After Murong-bo finished, Murong-bo's father spoke. Patriarch, this year's 8 immortals crossing the sea is not suitable for the young patriarch to appear, right? Yeah, she's already this strong. Isn't it too unfair to let her participate? It's fine if Xiao Ari wants to participate, but forget about Xiao Ying. The group of people muttered, but Murong-ying sneered. My cousins don't even dare to compete for a woman. Her words made many people blush, but there were also thick-skinned ones. You can't say that. After all, you're strong. You should give in to your brothers. What's the point of a girl being too powerful? In the end, she'll still have to get married. That's right. Leave the opportunity to your brothers. These people were chattering, and Li Fan could not stand it anymore. Murong Ying's brows were also tightly knitted together. It was obvious that she was holding back her anger. Wife, you don't need to appear for this kind of thing. Li Fan said with a smile, leave it to me. You want to replace Murong, replace the young patriarch? Murong sneered again, but Li Fan said, after all, I'm her fiancé. I'm not as strong as her. Brothers, you have to give in to me. Coward. There were many cold snorts, but Li Fan just raised his wine glass and drank it to them. In that case, let's let Li Fan replace my eldest daughter. Murong Bo agreed, if that's the case, does anyone have any opinion? Everyone was naturally happy, and no one objected. If Murong Ying were to participate in the competition, she would undoubtedly become the champion once again. After eating the unhappy dumplings, Li Fan followed everyone to a lake outside. This lake was not small, at least 1 kilometer in radius. In the center of the lake, there was a small pavilion with a firecracker tied to it. This firecracker was not small, and no one knew what kind of beautiful fireworks it would release. On the other side of the lake stood Li Fan and a group of young people from Murong's family. Each of them held a torch in their hands, which was their only source of fire. The only foothold on the lake was some floating duckweed. They were all green, as if it was summer. Li Fan heard from Murong that there was a mechanical heating at the bottom of the lake, and it was a warm lake all year round. Therefore, in winter, not only did the lake not freeze, the plants in the lake were also evergreen. Murong Bo sat on a specially made throne and pointed at the small pavilion on the opposite side of the lake. Do you see that? This is your target. Let us wait and see who will be first this year. The champion will be me. Murong pointed to herself and then pointed to Li Fan. You, be careful of your legs. Chapter 407. Cousin, please be merciful. Li Fan cupped his hands, looking like a modest young master, which made Murong Ying roll her eyes behind him. This guy, it would be strange if he could be modest. Everyone should know the rules. You can think of your own method, but no lives are allowed. Murong sat there with one hand gently supporting his chin. Remember the taboo of the Murong family, killing each other is absolutely not allowed. Li Fan saw many people laughing, including Murong Du, who laughed the happiest. Li Fan knew what he was thinking. Killing each other was not allowed, but he was an outsider. The concept of being a member of the same clan did not exist for him. These people would probably be able to attack him unscrupulously. The distance of 500 meters with Qing Gong was actually not that difficult for him. Everyone stood on the shore, waiting for Murong Du to give the order. Murong Du waved his hand, and a sword beside him flew out, spun a few times in the air, and finally stood on a stone tablet by the lake with a clang. In just a split second, everyone started to move. This was the signal to start. These disciples of the Murong family, each showing their supernatural power, took out their strongest Qinggong, stepped on duckweed, and flew toward the small pavilion in the center of the lake. These people constantly harassed their companions on the left and right while they were flying. In this competition, there were no companions. Even if they had the same surname, at this moment, they were enemies. These people of the Murong family were fighting to be the first to reach the island in the center of the lake and light the firecrackers. And Li Fan found that these people's strength was also uneven. Some were high, some were low. That Murong Du was one of the best. He ran in the front, and did not forget to move left and right, kicking away his fellow clansmen who caught up. Only Li Fan was still standing on the shore, stretching his muscles. They are almost at the island in the center of the lake. Are you still not going? Jiang Feng stood at the side with his arms crossed. He couldn't help but ask Li Fan. His expression was cold, and it was hard to tell what he was feeling. However, Li Fan knew that he was not worried that he would not be able to win the championship. Instead, he wanted to test his strength. Li Fan knew that, but he was not in a hurry. He did 2 more stretches. There's no rush. It's just a game anyway. Li Fan said. This is not an ordinary game. Jiang Feng said gloomily, be careful not to lose eldest Mrs. Honor. At this moment, Murong was already 300 meters away, less than half the distance to the island in the middle of the lake. "Don't worry, I'm leaving now." As Li Fan spoke, he suddenly lowered his body and pressed his hands on the ground. His whole body was almost stuck to the lake shore. His posture was like that of a frog. It didn't look good at all. Many of Murong's family members even started to laugh at him. However, Li Fan's following performance made them unable to laugh anymore. Li Fan's feet bounced, and his whole body suddenly jumped out. Black Toad crossing the water. Li Fan's body was like a cannonball. He quickly skimmed the surface of the water and glided forward. The water on the lake was separated by him, falling to the two sides. At the same time, he used his true chi to protect the torch so that it would not be extinguished. In the blink of an eye, Li Fan had already surpassed most of the Murong's disciples and soon arrived behind Murong. What? Murong looked back and was shocked to see Li Fan gliding over while sticking to the surface of the lake. The people on the shore were even more shocked. What kind of qinggong was this? He could actually jump more than 300 meters. He relied on Murong's family, but what he used was not the kung fu of Murong's family. These people didn't know that the black toad crossing the water was true to its name. The reason why Li Fan was able to glide more than 300 meters in an instant was because he was relying on the true chi that was wrapped under his body to glide against the water surface. He was like a boat, relying on the water surface to be able to move so fast. Li Fan's speed was astonishing. He was quickly approaching the island in the middle of the lake. "Damn it! You cunning parasite!" Although he didn't know what method Li Fan used, it was obvious that he had angered Murong. He extended his hand and pulled out his sword from his waist, preparing to repel Li Fan. However, there was a smile on Li Fan's face. His body suddenly bounced, and with a divine deer ascending to the moon, his whole body leaped high into the sky, as if he was a real deer ascending to the heavens, leaping high. What? Murong saw Li Fan flying high into the sky and was shocked. What kind of qinggong was this? Why was it so powerful? Li Fan's jump was more than 10 meters high, and he was still rising. In the blink of an eye, he was already 30 to 40 meters high, and with 2 jumps, he had crossed more than 200 meters. Finally, he easily landed on the opposite pavilion. Beside him was the dragon-head firecracker. All the Murong family disciples felt a chill in their hearts. Did they lose just like that? But Li Fan didn't light up the firecracker. He just sat there and looked indifferently at the people who were still running in the lake. With one hand holding the torch, he stretched out his other hand and beckoned, "Who wants to take this firecracker? Come quickly, it's right here." "Bastard. Isn't it just that your qinggong is a little better? Go over and beat him down." Li Fan's attitude angered all the Murong family disciples, especially Murong. He roared and increased his speed. When he got close to the pavilion, he directly jumped up and pointed the sword in his hand at Li Fan. Murong family was good at controlling sword chi. While Murong was in midair, he waved his sword and threw out a sword chi towards Li Fan. However, Li Fan stood on the small pavilion, grabbed the torch, and with a posture of a golden rooster standing on one leg, he kicked away the sword chi with one foot. The sword chi flew out diagonally and cut off a corner of the pavilion. "It's not over yet," Murong roared. He waved his hands continuously and a few sword chi flew towards Li Fan. However, Li Fan only relied on one leg, kicked left and right, and kicked the sword chi away. "Cousin, if you want this firecracker, you need to work harder." Li Fan seemed to be mocking him, which angered Murong even more. "You are not in the family. Your death is here. Parasite." With that, Murong fell towards Li Fan. The sword in his hand carried a huge sword chi and slashed towards Li Fan, but Li Fan just moved sideways and dodged Murong's sword. At the same time, he hit Murong's acupoint with white crane head, causing Murong's right hand to go numb and the sword in his hand fell out of his hand. Then, Li Fan kicked his chest and immediately kicked Murong down into the water. Luckily they were in shallow water and Murong would not drown. But more Murong disciples had already jumped onto the pavilion. But Li Fan only used one leg to kick them down. There were dozens of Murong clan disciples, but in the end, Li Fan was the only one who could stand in the pavilion. Chapter 408. Seniors of the Murong family, I'm really sorry. Although he was 500 meters away, Li Fan's voice seemed to ring in everyone's ears. It seems that I can only take the first place today. Your child still needs more guidance. The people of the Murong family gritted their teeth in anger, but no one could say anything. How did Murong Ying find a fiancé? How could his kung fu be so abnormal? Murong was considered one of the best in the family, but she was kicked into the lake with one move. It was too abnormal. Jiang Feng, go and get the dragon head. Murong didn't want Li Fan to be so proud. He glanced at the dragon head and ordered his disciple. Yes, master. Jiang Feng had been standing there with his arms crossed. When he heard the family head's order, he didn't hesitate to grab the torch, jump with his feet, and suddenly jump out. Although Jiang Feng's qigong was not as strange as Li Fan's, it was more free and easy. With a step on the lotus leaf, he could jump hundreds of meters forward. Almost in a few leaps, Jiang Feng had already landed in front of Li Fan and stood on the other side of the pavilion. Brother Jiang, long time no see. I wonder how your kung fu is progressing? Li Fan asked. I lost the last battle, Jiang Feng said, but this time, I'm here for revenge. Very good. Li Fan smiled. He was also looking forward to fighting with an expert who was one with the heart and demon. But isn't it not good to fight at the end of the year? Haven't you been fighting for a long time? Jiang Feng's eyes suddenly showed a trace of coldness. He suddenly reached forward and then reached out to grab the dragon head firecracker beside Li Fan. However, Li Fan kicked out and blocked in front of him. His foot was only 10 centimeters away from Jiang Feng's cheek, and Jiang Feng's hair was blown up by the wind. Jiang Feng quickly put the torch behind him to prevent it from being extinguished. Sorry, this thing might not belong to you. Li Fan reminded Jiang Feng. What I want is mine. Jiang Feng didn't stand on ceremony at all. He pointed 2 fingers at the acupuncture points on Li Fan's legs and jabbed them. It was the 12 acupoint strikes that he practiced. Jiang Feng had been cultivating this for so many years. Naturally, he had mastered the technique to perfection. Even if it was Li Fan, with the protection of his true qi, he was not confident that he could block this acupoint hitting hand without suffering any damage. Li Fan quickly withdrew his right leg and turned to kick Jiang Feng's face. Jiang Feng lowered his body and dodged Li Fan's kick. At the same time, he jabbed his hands at Li Fan's calf. However, Li Fan did not dodge this time. His leg came down heavily. Bang! Li Fan's calf was jabbed by the acupoint hitting hand, and Jiang Feng's chest also took the full brunt of Li Fan's rushing thunder kick. Jiang Feng's body heavily smashed into the pavilion, crushing the roof tiles. His body was temporarily paralyzed for a moment because of the electric light. Li Fan took a step back. His right calf was slightly numb, but he still stabilized his footsteps. Is the warm-up over? Jiang Feng suppressed the numbness in his body. When he heard Li Fan's words, he did a carp flip and stood up. Didn't brother Jiang practice human-demon unification? Li Fan gently waved his hand. No, it seems to be called heart-demon unification. 3 major martial arts talents, turning virtual into reality, aberration bone-changing, heart-demon unification. Jiang Feng coldly replied. Oh, yes, heart-demon unification. Li Fan nodded, that's it. Don't you want to show it? It's not time yet. Jiang Feng mercilessly rejected Li Fan. Don't be such a wet blanket. If you want to play, you should play to your heart's content, right? It's just a game, I don't want to take it seriously. If you lose, won't he blame you? This has nothing to do with you. Jiang Feng said and suddenly stepped forward. A series of acupoint hitting hand attacked Li Fan again and again. However, Li Fan dodged left and right, making Jiang Feng's attacks hit empty air. In the end, Li Fan even closed his eyes, but Jiang Feng still couldn't attack him. And when Jiang Feng approached the dragon head firecracker, Li Fan would force him to retreat. Within a meter of Li Fan's body, there seemed to be a vacuum circle, blocking Jiang Feng from entering. While the 2 of them attacked, they also had to protect the torch in their hands, lest the other party extinguish it. Enough. Li Fan sighed, Since you don't want to fight seriously, then I've played enough. As Li Fan said, it was as if he had entered a strange state, making Jiang Feng, who was looking at him from a close distance, stunned for a moment. Jiang Feng had an illusion that the person in front of him was not Li Fan, but a shining golden Buddha. Li Fan held the torch with one hand and slapped forward with the other. Merciful palm! A powerful palm wind blew on Jiang Feng's body, causing him to almost lose his footing, and the torch in Jiang Feng's hand was also blown out by this strong wind. At the same time, Li Fan swung his hand and the torch flew out, igniting the dragon head firecracker. With a rumbling sound, the dragon head flew out and rushed into the sky, turning into a huge firework. In the sky, there was a huge dragon swaying, as if it was roaring, preparing to rush into the sky. This huge firework could only be made by Murong's family. But when Li Fan set off this firework, no one seemed to be excited. Everyone's face turned ugly, except for Murong. This little girl kept clapping her hands. Brother-in-law is great. Really great. The little girl was very happy and kept clapping her hands, not caring how ugly the faces of the relatives around her were. Until Murong Bo scolded her, this girl stopped. This year's champion still belongs to Murong Ying. Murong Bo announced, therefore, Murong Ying can still sit on my left next year. Li Fan then understood that this champion would decide the order of the seats next year. This was not just a matter of the order, but also related to the position of the next family head. Obviously, Murong Ying had been holding the advantage, and it was very likely that she would continue to do so. This was not a good thing for the other people in the family. These cousins of Murong Bo were jealous of one thing, and that was why Murong Ying was so outstanding. Only Murong Bo did not say anything. He thought of the past. When everyone found out that he, Murong Bo, had 2 daughters, almost everyone rejoiced in his misfortune. He, Murong Bo, the strongest person in Murong Villa, actually gave birth to 2 daughters. What did this mean? It meant that the next patriarch might not have any relationship with Murong Bo's bloodline. But Murong Bo actually felt that it was nothing, daughters were good enough. He was in his prime and could be the family head for 50 years. But Murong Ying's childhood was unfortunate. Even if she had the strongest father, other people looked at her with a kind of sympathy and a kind of joy. Chapter 409. Murong Ying grew up in the eyes of others. Everyone thought that she could not shoulder the responsibility of the Murong family. She was just a woman. That was the evaluation of the Murong family, including the elders of Murong Bo, about her. When she was 15, Murong Ying defeated the Wu-Tang sect leader. When she returned home, everyone looked at her differently. At that time, the Wu-Tang sect leader was recognized as the strongest person below the Grandmaster. However, Murong Ying changed everything. When she was 16, she became the leader of the martial arts world. She returned to the family, lit the firecrackers, and sat next to her father. After father abdicates, I will take over the Murong family. That was all she said. Is there anyone who disagrees? Everyone was convinced. No one dared to say no. Murong Bo felt gratified to have such a daughter. She was like a treasure to him, and such a treasure was taken by a despicable man. Murong Bo would not allow such a thing to happen. This new year was an opportunity. He wanted to make Li Fan back off. The 8 immortals crossing the sea. He had thought that Li Fan would lose. However, he did not expect that Li Fan's qinggong and kicks had improved to such a level. Jiang Feng might not be able to catch up to him. He thought that Jiang Feng was a good seedling. He spent so much effort to cultivate him, but he was disappointed. Li Fan must have used some underhanded means. Murong Bo was very dissatisfied with his loss. After the 8 immortals crossing the sea, Murong Bo sat with a few of his good friends in the family and expressed his dissatisfaction angrily. This parasite. Maybe he took some forbidden drug at that time. Murong Bo guessed fiercely. He must have taken drugs. Another member of the family named Murong Quan Bo made a judgment. I heard that there is something called the Heavenly Demon Pill. It's quite powerful. Maybe this guy took it. That's right. In order to fight for this position, he must have made preparations. Murong slammed the table. This damned bastard. We must punish him. But he's staying in the wing room, and is protected by Murong-bo. We can't do that, can we? A timid clansman couldn't help but ask. Do you really think that Murong will protect him? Murong laughed coldly. Patriarch hates this person, he is a parasite. That's right, I can see everything from the patriarch's gaze. Indeed, the patriarch's gaze towards him was filled with disgust. The others also agreed with Murong's words. So, Murong-bo won't care about him. Even if we make a big fuss, Murong-bo will protect us. In fact, he can't wait to use our hands to get rid of this son-in-law that he doesn't like. What about Murong-ying? It won't come out, right? Don't worry. It's the end of the year. As the young patriarch, she has a lot of things to do. Moreover, many people are coming to pay New Year's greetings to the chief of Wulin. She won't have time to care about this. Murong pulled out his sword and placed it on the table. I'm going to do this. Who else wants to participate? Me. Then count me in. Everyone agreed. A total of 5 experts from the 5 clans decided the same fate for Li Fan. Tomorrow is the last day that the parasite will stay in this house. We'll make our move tonight. Good. Agreed. Everyone agreed one after another. They were just waiting for the night to fall. In Murong's heart, he was the most outstanding one in Murong's clan. Since young, he was extremely talented. Moreover, he was a male. Therefore, the clan had high hopes for him. The clan's best treasures were given to him first to help him cultivate his chi and build his foundation. They were preparing to make him the next successor of Murong's clan. This matter continued until the appearance of Murong-ying. This woman is simply a demon that crawled out from hell. She's here to end his good days. Forget about Murong-ying. Now there's Li Fan. Who knows what method this guy used to become a parasite in Murong's house? He even practiced some messy martial arts. How could he possibly be stronger than her? Therefore, when night fell, Murong brought a few of his brothers. They put on black clothes and quietly went to Li Fan's room. The few of them had already discussed it. They were just waiting for Murong's order to make their move. At this time, Li Fan was in the living room. Moreover, he wasn't the only one there. A youngster carrying a large sword sat opposite Li Fan. A chessboard was placed in front of them. The most traditional China chess. Li Fan had played it with Xiao Sai a few times. Therefore, he had some experience. The youngster carrying the large sword was obviously a little lacking. He looked at the chessboard and couldn't help but frown. Why? Are you going to admit defeat? Are you frightened by my superb chess skills? Li Fan couldn't help but ask. No, the youngster shook his head. I'm thinking. Do you have other guests? Of course not. Just a few mice. Li Fan waved his hand. The youngster nodded. Then I'll help you get rid of them. As the youngster spoke, he slammed the table. That chessboard jumped up. The youngster's cannon crossed the river. Li Fan's elephant bounced up. The youngster waved his hand. This chess piece flew out, smashing the window and hitting the head of a Murong's disciple outside. That guy screamed and fell out of the window. Your elephant has been eaten. The youngster reminded Li Fan. Then you can forget about your cannon. Li Fan immediately used his horse to eat the youngster's cannon. At the same time, he tossed it out. This cannon made a turn in the air and hit another disciple who wanted to sneak attack. Wasted 2 chess pieces, but there are still 3 mice. Li Fan sighed. If you want to come in, it's best to go through the front door. Going through the window is not a gentleman's behavior. Parasite. Don't you dare be so arrogant. The door was kicked open, and Murong-do, along with 2 of his companions, walked in with a fierce look on his face while carrying a long sword. Isn't this my cousin? Li Fan looked at this familiar face and smiled. You know that I'm leaving tomorrow, so you specially came to send me off. Friend, we have some scores to settle. This has nothing to do with you. You'd better get out of the way. Murong did not answer Li Fan. Instead, she stared at that youngster and scolded. I'm afraid that won't do. The youngster pondered for a moment and then said, we haven't finished playing yet. Then you'll be in trouble with him. Under Murong's order, her 2 companions swung their swords and attacked the youngster. The youngster sighed. Murong's swordsmanship is ruined. He did not even pull out the great sword on his back. He just picked up the broom beside him and with a few sword moves, he sent the swords of the two Murong's disciples flying. Murong was a bit dumbfounded. This guy. Who is he? Chapter 4:10. Murong was in disbelief. Who was this youth with a huge sword on his back? How could he use a broom to send his partner's sword flying? Who are you? Murong-du gripped his sword tightly and asked with some apprehension. My surname is Chen. The youth replied simply, Huashan's Chen Junhua. Edgeless sword. Chen Junhua. The youth revealed his name, causing Murong's heart to skip a beat. Edgeless sword, this was the title given to Chen Junhua in the pugilistic world. As mentioned before, those who could obtain a title in the pugilistic world were all top-notch experts. Murong could not understand. Why would a Huashan elite disciple play chess with a parasite here? How was this possible? The game is not over yet. Can you please leave first? Chen Junhua asked politely. I don't care what edgeless sword you are. Murong-du's jealousy had already burned everything. He was jealous of Li Fan, and he was also jealous of Chen Junhua. He just lacked an opportunity. If he had the chance, he would do better than them. The pugilistic world owed him a title. Yes, he should be called the strongest king. Murong's heart burned with anger when he thought of this. He held his sword and gathered all his true chi on the blade. This sword faintly emitted a silver glow. The sword aura of Murong's family shone like the family's emblem. No matter who you are, you will be defeated by my sword today. Murong roared. Li Fan shrugged his shoulders. I'm really sorry. Since you are my guest, let me deal with you. Dream on. Murong brandished his sword and slashed at Li Fan. The sword aura seemed to tear through the air and instantly appeared in front of Li Fan. Li Fan only stretched out his hand and used his iron palms to forcefully tear apart the sword aura. You don't even have a tenth of Murong Ying's sword chi. Li Fan bluntly told the jealous Murong, if you have the time to find trouble with me, you might as well practice your swordsmanship. My swordsmanship is completely natural. I don't need you to teach me. As Murong spoke, she pounced in front of Li Fan and continuously attacked Li Fan with her long sword. Murong-du was, after all, a young talent nurtured by the Murong family. His swordsmanship was remarkable. However, to Li Fan, who was used to Murong Ying's swordplay, when he looked at Murong's speed, it was indeed a little lacking. Li Fan nodded to the white crane twice and flicked away Murong-du's sword. At the same time, his left hand suddenly made a tiger claw, directly grabbing onto Murong's face, grabbing his head and pressing him to the ground. Bam! A hole was smashed on the floor. Murong-du felt his vision go black. The sharp pain made him temporarily lose consciousness and temporarily dizzy. When he woke up again, only 1 or 2 seconds had passed, but it felt like a century. Go back and practice again, cousin. Li Fan said to Murong-du, who was a little stunned from the fall, otherwise, next time you won't be able to keep your head, it's very likely that it will turn into brain juice. Parasite. Murong-du still fiercely said, you must have taken some forbidden medicine, I will definitely find out. I will drive you out of here. Clang. Li Fan picked up Murong-du's long sword, brushed past his ear, and stabbed the side of his head. Murong-du was so scared that his hair was trembling. For a long time, he did not say a word. Now, get out of here. Li Fan kicked Murong-du out. Murong-du fell outside the house. He did not even care about his companions. Using his hands and feet, he awkwardly ran away. They don't have the demeanor of the Murong family. Chen Junhua looked at the chessboard. While thinking, he gave an evaluation. The Murong family has declined. After driving the remaining 2 people out of the room, Li Fan closed the door and said, at least in these people, it has declined. Practicing martial arts should not have jealousy. Chen Junhua sighed, once there is jealousy, it will go astray and become a devil. Exactly. But from the breathing I heard, the devil in Brother Li's body is not shallow. Xiao Hua, you really have good hearing. Li Fan could not help but praise. Chen Junhua felt that this name was strange. Yes, I practice too fast. The devil in my heart is naturally heavy. In Mount Hua, there is a breathing technique called purple chi from the east. Chen Junhua said, "This technique can help you refine the righteousness and suppress the devil in your heart. Can you teach me?" Hearing that there was such a kung fu, Li Fan was a little interested. "I need to consult the sect leader first. After all, it is the kung fu of Mount Hua." Chen Junhua smiled with some embarrassment. "Understandable." Li Fan nodded. "It seems that this trip to Mount Hua with you will be very rewarding. The observatory of Mount Hua is my favorite place." Chen Junhua's calm face seemed to have an extra hint of joy. "When we get there, let's have a good exchange of swordsmanship." "Of course, I will satisfy you, Xiao Hua." Li Fan chuckled. His words made Chen Junhua's chrysanthemum cold. "Then when do we leave?" "I think tonight is not a bad idea." Li Fan already did not want to stay in Murong's house any longer. One more minute would make him feel tired. Although there were two of his women here, let's say they were his, there were more people that he did not like. "I have 2 fast horses." Chen Junhua immediately said, "We can travel 1,000 miles in a day, we can reach Mount Hua in 3 days and 3 nights. "Damn, I don't want to ride a horse." Li Fan had ridden Guan Wenbao's Lisa once, and it was very uncomfortable. The warriors on their horses were the real warriors. After riding a horse, Li Fan's legs hurt for 2 days. "Then how are we going to Mount Hua?" "By train." Li Fan proposed a more modern method, but Chen Junhua shook his head. "Mount Hua has rules. Although modern tools are convenient, they are not conducive to cultivation." "Then what do you want to do?" "Why don't we compare our leg strength?" Li Fan said, "Fuck you, it's such a long distance, run there." "Brother Li, you admit defeat?" "Stop it, Xiao Hua, I'm afraid you can't keep up." "Brother Li, you must be joking. Although my martial arts is a little weak, I think my qigong is not bad." Chen Junhua rarely boasted, but hearing him say that his qigong was good, Li Fan was very surprised. "All right, then let's compete." "Young hero Li, please. Let me pack my things first. There are not too many rules in the pugilistic world. Why don't we set off now?" Chen Junhua was rather carefree. He directly tied his shoes a little tighter. "Brother Li, do you want me to go easy on you?" "What a joke. There is no need to go easy on me. Let's go." Li Fan was also angry. He actually wanted to give in to him. How could this be? Without hesitation, he immediately opened the door and rushed out. Chapter 4:11. Along the way, they walked through deserted places to avoid being too shocking. Li Fan used the deer scamper. His legs were strong and steady. Along the way, he kept flying. Only the snowflakes behind him seemed to be unable to catch him. The Mount Hua sect youngster's qigong was even more amazing. He stepped on his huge sword and used his qi to control the sword. It was almost as if he was gliding along the ground. Li Fan felt that the way he rode the sword was similar to his black toad crossing the water. Chen Junhua also wrapped his sword with qi and stepped on it, moving forward at high speed. Every time the sword slowed down, he would step on it like he was on a skateboard. He would put down one of his feet and step on the sword again, gliding forward another 100 meters. People who didn't know better would think that this guy could really ride the sword and fly. The two of them, one in front and one behind, were almost touching each other. When they were hungry, they would eat the dry food that Chen Junhua brought with him. When they were thirsty, they would drink the dew. It really felt like they were walking in the martial world. In less than a day, they arrived at the foot of Mount Hua. The weather was cold and Mount Hua was covered in snow. It was indeed a quiet place for cultivation. Perhaps because of the cold weather, there weren't many tourists on Mount Hua, which was originally a tourist attraction. Chen Junhua led Li Fan into the main hall of Mount Hua. Then, he led Li Fan to the side hall at the back where tourists weren't allowed to enter. There were a few workers in front of the side hall. When they saw Chen Junhua, they didn't stop him and let him and Li Fan walk in. "The part outside is for tourists." Chen Junhua explained casually, "After all, we need to eat too. We need to generate income." Li Fan was speechless. This way of generating income was quite modern. However, the real Mount Hua sect is behind the side hall. Tourists are not allowed to enter here. Chen Junhua pointed at the huge mountain gate in front of him and said to Li Fan. At this time, Li Fan was already a little dumbfounded. This place was indeed huge. The first thing he saw were two towering pillars that pierced through the clouds. It was unknown how many years of history they had experienced, but they were still standing tall. On top of it was a plaque of the Mount Hua sect. The name of the sect was written in golden seal script. Behind the gate pillar was the grand hall of the Mount Hua sect. The entire mountain was filled with houses, but they were built according to certain feng shui principles. Brother Li, there are many disciples in the Mount Hua sect. It will be a little troublesome to arrange your accommodation. Chen Junhua pondered for a moment, then asked, "Why don't you stay in the same room with me? We can also discuss swordsmanship day and night. What do you think?" Chen Junhua was truly a sword maniac. Li Fan sized him up a few more times, thinking that this kind of soft and tender-looking pretty boy should be Yang Kai's favorite. Forget it, sleeping with a man is nothing. Chen Junhua probably doesn't have that kind of hobby. Not long after Chen Junhua and Li Fan entered the mountain gate, a beautiful girl with braided hair ran over excitedly. She was wearing a white robe of the Mount Hua sect, and her steps were light. The girl was quite pretty, but she was a little short. She was about 1.5 meters tall and belonged to the petite category. She was obviously happy to see Chen Junhua. "Senior brother, you're finally back. You promised to teach me the wild goose soaring sky last time. I've been waiting for a long time. Little junior sister, don't pester your third senior brother the moment you come. Can't you see that he has guests to entertain?" A deep voice was heard. Li Fan turned around and saw a middle-aged man who looked rather mature walking over with a sword hanging on his waist. The little junior sister also had a sword hanging on her waist. It seemed that in the entire Mount Hua sect, Chen Junhua was the only one who carried such a heavy sword. Eldest senior brother. Chen Junhua and the smiling girl bowed to the mature man together. The little junior sister even went up to pull the eldest senior brother's sleeve and said coquettishly, "Eldest senior brother, I miss third senior brother, and I want to learn swordsmanship. Eldest senior brother, why don't you teach me properly? Little junior sister, don't mess around." Although the eldest senior brother was scolding her, he touched the little junior sister's hair lovingly. "It's the end of the year. There are many things in the sect that require my attention. And your third senior brother has guests to entertain. He just came back recently. Don't pester him too much. But I want to practice swordsmanship." Sect leader said that I can only leave the mountain after I master swordsmanship. The little junior sister pouted as if she was very dissatisfied. "Third senior brother always goes down the mountain alone. I'm so bored." All right. Stop messing around. You've made a fool of yourself in front of the guests," the eldest senior brother said as his gaze fell on Li Fan. He cupped his hands and said, "I'm sorry. Xia Hong is lively and straightforward. I've made a fool of myself. It's all right. I think this little junior sister is straightforward and cute." The little junior sister blushed as if she was praised. She looked very cute. Mount Hua's young Yuansheng, Chen Junhua's eldest senior brother. "May I know your name?" Extraordinary Escort Agency, Li Fan. Li Fan also cupped his hands. "I came rashly and disturbed your esteemed sect. Please forgive me." "Oh." When young Yuansheng heard Li Fan's name, he was clearly taken aback. His eyebrows shot up. It seemed that Li Fan's name carried some weight. "Eldest senior brother, Brother Li is a guest that I invited. He wants to stay with me on Mount Hua for a few days and exchange swordsmanship." Chen Junhua explained at the side. "So that's how it is. This is a wonderful thing." Young Yuansheng nodded. "In that case, young Hero Li can treat this as your own home. If you need anything, just let Junhua know. Then I shall accept your invitation." Li Fan did not stand on ceremony and immediately agreed. "All right, I still have things to take care of, so I won't stay any longer. Young Hero Li, please don't take offense for my poor hospitality." "How could that be? The scenery here is just right. Just looking at it makes me feel relaxed and happy." Li Fan hurriedly cupped his hands and said, Senior brother Yang, you don't have to be so polite. Just do what you need to do. Alright, then I'll see you later. Yang Yuansheng nodded and turned to leave. Xia Yi, on the other hand, felt a little strange. She muttered to herself, who is this Li Fan? Why does he look so surprised? Senior brother Li, is your swordsmanship very good? Not good. Li Fan hurriedly said, I'm not good at swordsmanship. I only know some martial arts. Aya, martial arts are not as good as swordsmanship. Xia Yi waved her sword. Why don't you become a disciple of my Mount Hua sect and be my junior brother? I can teach you powerful swordsmanship. If you learn 3 moves, I guarantee that you will enjoy endless benefits. In the future, you will be able to do whatever you want in Jianghu. All right. Li Fan nodded, causing Chen Junhua to laugh. Junior sister, don't talk nonsense. His swordsmanship is much better than yours. Chapter 412. Hehe, third senior brother, I won't be fooled by you this time. Xia, who put her hands behind her back and clasped her fingers together. She said proudly, if he's skilled in swordsmanship, why didn't he bring a sword? Also, look at the calluses on his fingers and joints. It's obvious that he practices fist techniques. Your junior sister is quite smart. Li Fan could not help but praise, little girl, you have potential. Practice your swordsmanship well and strive to be a master when you grow up. Go away, who's a little girl? Xia, who was immediately unhappy, I'm already 18 years old this year. Me. Li Fan was indeed stunned for a moment. He carefully looked at the petite Xia Yi. He could not imagine that this girl was actually 18 years old. However, if he looked carefully, her cup size did not seem small. Li Fan thought that she had gone through puberty in advance. He did not expect that it was just that she did not grow taller. What are you waiting for? Call me senior sister. Xia, who looked as if she wanted to tease Li Fan, which made Li Fan laugh. Okay. Senior sister Xia, please guide me. Li Fan cupped his hands at this little girl who was 2 heads shorter than him and respectfully called her senior sister. Xia, who was so happy that she burst into laughter. Third senior brother, look. I'm not the youngest now. Xia, who clapped her hands happily, which made Chen Junhua laugh. Okay. You're the best. Go practice your swordsmanship. I'm going to bring brother Li to see the sect leader. I want to go too. Xia, who seemed to like to join in the fun and insisted on coming along. Chen Junhua didn't seem to be able to do anything about his little junior sister, so he could only let her follow him like a shadow. Li Fan admired the magnificent Huashan sect along the way. Especially under the cover of snow, the scenery of the Huashan sect was even more beautiful. It was a beautiful sight to behold. Along the way, Xia, who was like a curious baby and kept asking Li Fan questions. Little junior brother, what fist technique are you practicing? 7 Heroes Fist. 7 Heroes Fist. What kind of fist technique is this? I've never heard of it before. You're not lying to me, are you? Humph, I'm your senior sister, you have to respect me. How could I dare to lie to senior sister? It is indeed the 7 Hero Fist. Your third senior brother can testify for me. Xia, who looked at Chen Junhua, who hurriedly said. That's right, it's the fist of the 7 heroes. It's a fist technique created by brother Li. That's right, it's self-created, so it's definitely not that powerful. But I'm interested in learning. How about this, you teach me fist techniques, and I teach you sword techniques. Then we'll be fair. Stop messing around. Chen Junhua hurriedly reminded Xia who, the Huashan sword technique is not taught to outsiders. If you want to teach it, you have to get permission from the sect leader. What's the rush? I only want to exchange the charming and gentle sword technique. Don't embarrass yourself with those sword techniques that you created yourself. Chen Junhua was speechless. Why? They're all self-created, it's not a loss to exchange them. Little senior sister is right. Let's spar and exchange insights. Li Fan's words made Xia who satisfied. That's more like it. I'll let you see the power of my sword techniques later. The 3 of them talked all the way to the Eastern Aura Hall where the sect leader was. The Eastern Aura Hall was the largest hall of the Huashan sect. There was a golden statue inside, which was the founder of the Huashan sect. It was revered by all the disciples of the sect for generations. The Huashan sect was also the largest sword sect in the pugilistic world. Without exception, all the disciples in the sect focused on practicing sword techniques. Not far behind the Eastern Aura Hall was the buried sword pool of the Huashan sect. Every generation of Huashan sect disciples would put their swords into the buried sword pool when they passed away or washed their hands of the sect. When a new disciple officially became the disciple of the sect, they could take a new sword from the buried sword pool. The sect leader of the Huashan sect, Tang Yarrow, was wearing a purple robe and sitting in the Eastern Aura Hall. Beside him was a familiar face. Disciple Chen Junhua greets the sect leader. Chen Junhua bowed to Tang Yarrow. Li Fan pretended not to see the familiar person beside him and bowed as well. I'm Li Fan. Greetings, sect leader Tang. Disciple Xia Hu greets the sect leader. Xia who was beside him, hurriedly shouted. Li Fan could feel that there were two fiery lights coming from the position of that acquaintance. Little Overlord Li Fan? Ha, a rare guest, a rare guest. Tang Yarrow was very polite. Previously, Yuansheng asked someone to tell me, and I thought he was joking. I didn't expect that I would really meet young hero Li. Oh right, young hero Li, this is the master of the Golden Eagle Castle, Yin Wuchao. I believe you two have met before. This fate is not shallow. Yin Wuchao clenched his fists, narrowed his eyes, and glanced at Li Fan. However, in front of Tang Yarrow, he couldn't act up. Yin Wuchao's hair was slightly white before, but in such a short period of time, his hair was completely white. It seemed like he had put in a lot of effort for his Golden Eagle Castle. Since young hero Li is here, have a good stroll around Mount Hua. Enjoy the scenery and feel refreshed. Of course. I've just entered Mount Hua and don't know the rules. If I offend sect leader Tang in the future, please forgive me. Good. Junhua, I still have some matters to discuss with Castle Master Yin. Take good care of young hero Li on my behalf. Don't neglect him. Yes, sect leader. Chen Junhua raised his hand. Sect leader, young hero Li's heart demon is heavy. I want to teach him our sect's purple aura from the east. I hope sect leader will approve. Oh, it's just a basic breathing technique. You decide. This Chen Junhua was an outstanding disciple of Mount Hua. Tang Yarrow obviously doted on him. He waved his hand. Go. Bring young hero Li around Mount Hua. Xia Hu, don't cause trouble. I'm not that mischievous. Xia Hu pouted unhappily. When they were about to leave, Yin Wuchao suddenly asked, young hero Li, may I know which room you'll be staying in tonight? This old man hasn't seen you for a while and wants to catch up with you. Yin Wuchao, this old man, wants to catch up with me? He's probably looking for an opportunity to teach me a lesson. Li Fan wasn't angry. Instead, he said with a smile, Mount Hua is so big and beautiful. I plan to stroll around here for the next few days. Wherever I go, I'll sleep. Very good, very good. Hehe, the corner of Yin Wuchao's mouth twitched. Since that's the case, I'll take my leave. Li Fan wanted to laugh, but he held it in and pretended to be open-minded. He turned around and left the hall with Chen Junhua and his junior sister. After leaving the hall, Li Fan could still faintly hear the conversation in the hall. Sect leader Tang, the devil sect is arrogant. You should help me. Castle Master Yin. This Mount Hua secret room hasn't been opened for nearly 100 years. I'm afraid. Chapter 413. It was just a few words, and the rest could not be heard clearly. Li Fan could only guess that it was about a secret chamber or something. Does the Huashan sect also have a secret chamber? It would not be good to ask Chen Junhua this question. Brother Li, please take a look. This is our Mount Hua's burial sword pool. Chen Junhua pointed to a huge pool in front of him. Although it was a pool, there was no water in it, and the snow had been swept clean. There were all kinds of treasured swords, long and short, big and small. At first glance, it really looked like a treasure sword graveyard. My edgeless sword was found here. Chen Junhua seemed to be a little emotional. It feels like I did not choose it, but it chose me. That's right, that's right. My charming sword was also chosen here. Xia, who also joined in the fun, my charming sword is much more beautiful than third senior brother's edgeless sword. As she spoke, Xia, who pulled out her sword from the scabbard on her waist. Li Fan sized it up. This charming sword's blade was slender, and the cloud patterns on the blade were very exquisite. Under the sunlight, it glowed with a dazzling brilliance. It was indeed very beautiful. Don't pursue flashy things. Chen Junhua reminded his junior sister. H, it's enough as long as you have good looks. Xia, who was very unconvinced, and said, third senior brother is obviously jealous of me. You little girl. Chen Junhua felt helpless towards his junior sister, but Li Fan could not help but want to laugh. It was really interesting to have a junior sister. However, he did not belong to any sect, so it was impossible for him to have a legendary junior sister. Since we are already at the burial sword pool, why not Brother Li choose a treasured sword that you like? Is this appropriate? Li Fan was a little surprised. No matter how many treasured swords the Huashan sect had, they could not be casually given away, right? It doesn't matter. Chen Junhua pointed to the treasured swords in the pool and said, as the saying goes, treasured swords are given to heroes. My Huashan sect has such a tradition since ancient times. In the burial sword pool of the Huashan sect, there are not only swords left behind by the seniors of Huashan, but also swordsmen and experts from outside. They can also bury their treasured swords in my burial sword lake. Similarly, the experts outside can also choose a sword that they like from the buried sword pool. However, as I said, it's not us who choose the sword, it's the sword that chooses us. Yeah, it's very difficult to choose a sword from the burial sword pool. Xia, who also said, don't be happy just yet. When the time comes, you'll suffer. Me. Alright then. Since you've said so, I'll give it a try. Li Fan rolled up his sleeves and walked into the burial sword pool. Suddenly, he felt a powerful pressure coming from the pool. They were clearly just some inanimate objects, so why did they give him such pressure? Li Fan felt a little strange. He had never felt this way before. In front of him were many treasured swords, all quietly inserted into the soil. But for some reason, Li Fan felt that these swords seemed to have come alive the moment he stepped in. All the treasured swords buzzed, as if something was passing between them. It also seemed like they were repelling Li Fan. Li Fan stretched out his hand to touch one of the treasured swords, but suddenly, a sword chi shot out from it and shot towards Li Fan. Dang! Li Fan used his crane hand to slap away the sword chi. The sword chi hit the treasured sword beside him, producing a crisp knocking sound, as if it was playing a samba tune. I see. Li Fan understood. This was probably the meaning of the so-called sword selection. Are you also resistant to me? Li Fan looked at the constantly trembling treasured swords in surprise. Hehe, that's why I said it's not that easy to get our Huashan sect's treasured swords. Li Fan did not insist and left the burial sword pool. It seems like I really don't have the talent to use a sword. Brother Li, you're too humble. Why don't you try again? Chen Junhua actually hoped that Li Fan would choose a sword and have a good spar with him. Forget it, I'm really not suitable to use a sword. H, you obviously can't. Xia, who crossed her arms and said, this burial sword pool is not a place that anyone can come to. Third senior brother, you said that he was very powerful, but I think he's just SOSO. Alright, Xia who, go and practice your sword. Don't cause trouble here anymore. Chen Junhua urged Xia who to leave. Third senior brother, you're actually chasing me away. Don't you usually pamper me? Do you hate me? Xia who began to act coquettishly again. Li Fan said that when this petite girl acted coquettishly, Chen Junhua obviously couldn't stop her. I'm really afraid of you. Chen Junhua could only say, go stand at the side, I want to spar with Brother Li, okay, but don't bully junior brother. Xia who hurriedly said, as if she was really protecting her junior brother. I'm bullying him. Chen Junhua was speechless, thinking to himself, it's already good enough that he doesn't bully me. Then should I use the 7 heroes fist to fight? Li Fan asked. No, I want to spar with Brother Li in sword techniques. Chen Junhua hurriedly said. But I really don't know any sword techniques. It's not good to be too humble. How about this? Li Fan glanced at Xia Hu. Senior sister, why don't you teach me 2 moves of your charming sword technique now? Okay. But what's the use of learning it? Senior sister, teach it to me first. Li Fan didn't say it out loud and only requested. Sure, my charming sword technique is broad and profound. You have to watch carefully. If you don't understand it, you can ask me at any time. Xia Hu looked very serious. Watch carefully. Xia Hu was also bored, so she came up with a charming sword technique when she had nothing to do. When this charming sword technique was displayed, Li Fan could clearly see that it was mainly sticky and entangled. This move might not be enough to attack, but it was very good for defense. When this sword technique was displayed, it really had a lingering feeling. It was worthy of the word charming sword technique. However, it didn't have any attack power, so it was no wonder that Chen Junhua didn't like it. Have you seen it? Xia Hu seemed a little excited, and her face was a little red. I've only developed 1 move, that's enough. Li Fan stretched out his hand. Senior sister, can I borrow your sword? Yen, take it. Xia Hu wasn't stingy and handed the charming sword to Li Fan. Li Fan waved his long sword and pointed it at Chen Junhua. Little Hua, come on. Okay. Chen Junhua didn't know what Li Fan was up to, but he still carefully pulled out the big sword behind him. Although the big sword outside was just a scabbard, it was still very powerful when he used it. No one dared to underestimate it. You and I will only compete in sword techniques, regardless of internal energy. Li Fan said. Little Hua, use your sword. Chapter 414. Brother Li, watch my sword. Chen Junhua directly waved the sword in his hand and pierced towards Li Fan's eyebrows. Such a heavy sword, in his hands, was as if it was nothing. He aimed it straight at Li Fan's eyebrows, and his wrist did not even tremble. However, Li Fan's expression did not change as he stabbed out with his charming gentle sword. At the same time, the sword was shaken by him and wrapped around Chen Junhua's sword. Chen Junhua was shocked. His sword was like a clay ox entering the sea, making him unable to control it. Clang! Li Fan flicked his long sword and the edgeless sword in Chen Junhua's hand was directly sent flying. Chen Junhua was surprised as he stared at his palm for a long time. Xia Yi was even more surprised as she directly grabbed Li Fan's arm. Oh my god, did you just use the charming gentle sword? Yes, senior sister. Li Fan was currently using the ape-faced Buddha from his 7-hero fist, heaven and earth law embodiment. He had successfully learned the charming gentle sword, and he was able to draw inferences about other things from it, making the use of this move even more perfect. Even Chen Junhua was at a disadvantage under this move of his. Has little senior sister named this move? Li Fan asked. No, not yet. Since that's the case, why don't we call it charming gentle thorns? All right. Xia Yi clapped her hands. Junior brother is really artistic. The name you came up with is very nice. This sword technique, how did you execute it? It's much more powerful than what I, senior sister, can do. Senior sister is just too concerned about the magnificence of this move. Li Fan explained, actually, when using this move, with a little more variation, you can easily break the opponent's sword technique. Li Fan's sword technique was not elegant, instead, it was full of unpredictability, making it hard to predict. Brother Li, watch my sword. Chen Junhua was somewhat unwilling as he waved his edgeless sword and swung it upwards. Li Fan used the same stance. With a charming thorns, he once again entangled Chen Junhua's greatsword and swung it. Clang! Once again, Chen Junhua's sword was sent flying. Chen Junhua was on the verge of breaking down. 2 moves in a row had actually been defeated by Li Fan using the moves of his junior sister that he looked down upon, the charming and gentle swordplay. Chen Junhua had always thought that it was a joke. However, he did not expect that Li Fan would use this sword technique to defeat him twice in a row. For a swordsman, his treasured sword was sent flying by someone else. This was truly despairing. Lil Hua, you don't need to be depressed. I only caught you off guard twice. Once you get used to it, I won't be your match anymore. I hope so. It's just that Brother Li's talent makes me a little depressed, don't mind me. In terms of talent in swordsmanship, you are much better than me. Li Fan told the truth. The reason I could think of this move was actually because of the help of my 7 gallant fists. A fist technique can strengthen a sword technique? Chen Junhua was in disbelief. However, Li Fan said, of course it can. The path of martial arts actually leads to the same goal. He spoke frankly with assurance, as long as you understand the true meaning within, you will naturally be able to connect to all. Although Li Fan's words were impressive, he actually had to rely on the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth to be able to display such superb imitation ability. However, his words affected Chen Junhua. This brother lowered his head and repeated Li Fan's words. Connect to all with one, connect to all with one. Alright. Go back and slowly comprehend it. Do you still want to compete? Li Fan held the charming and gentle sword and asked Chen Junhua. Yes. Chen Junhua nodded his head firmly. Following which, he raised his sword again and pointed it at Li Fan. Alright, let's do it. Li Fan also held the charming and gentle sword in his hand and felt the sword tremble slightly. The charming and gentle sword seemed to be excited. Why? Are you excited too? Li Fan looked at the charming and gentle sword in his hand. Excited for the long-awaited battle? Chen Junhua stepped forward and drew his sword. Li Fan immediately swung out the charming and gentle sword and wrapped it around Chen Junhua's sword. However, Chen Junhua lowered his sword's edge and an intense sword chi erupted from his sword. It was just like the sword chi from the Murong clan, and it shook off Li Fan's treasured sword. Hey! Li Fan was a little surprised. However, he turned his body and stabbed the charming and gentle sword towards Chen Junhua's vitals. However, Chen Junhua's long sword wrapped and flicked, and he actually flicked Li Fan's charming and gentle sword away. What the fuck? Li Fan wanted to curse. This Chen Junhua's learning speed was a little too fast. He only said one sentence, connect to all with one, and this guy had easily learned his moves. He even learned some of the Murong clan's sword arts. This was really a pain in the ass. Why? Third senior martial brother also learned this move. Xia, who clapped her hands excitedly and said enviously, senior martial brother learned so fast. It would be great if I could also learn this move. Boo-hoo, I can't accept this. I'm clearly the senior martial sister, but I actually can't grasp it as fast as junior martial brother. Xia, whose unconvinced expression made Li Fan and Chen Junhua laugh at the same time. This junior sister of his was really frank and straightforward. It was because of her personality that the senior martial brothers of Mount Hua doted on her. It's getting late. Senior martial brother, we still have to attend the night class. Seeing that the two of them were eager to fight a few more rounds, Xia, who glanced at the setting sun that disappeared into the mountain stream and reminded her third senior martial brother. Oh, I almost forgot. Chen Junhua was indeed a martial arts fanatic. After hearing his junior martial sister's reminder, he suddenly came to a realization, we still have to attend the night class. Yeah, we still have to discuss tomorrow's sword conference. Oh! Chen Junhua seemed to have thought of something. It seems like it's almost time. Senior martial brother, you've forgotten about this matter. Chen Junhua shifted his gaze to the side. Xia, who said angrily, you really did forget. Third senior martial brother is so annoying. Other than sword practice, I can't remember anything else. Then, Brother Li, let Xia who send you to my place to rest first. Chen Junhua said to Li Fan, rest for the night first. Tomorrow, let's go watch the sword conference together. Oh, okay. Chen Junhua rushed to the night class. Xia Yi sent Li Fan to his room. On the way, Li Fan could not help but ask, Xia Hu, what is the sword conference? Our Mount Hua sect is actually divided into many small sects. Xia Hu explained to Li Fan, some of them are also on Mount Hua. Some are at Mount Tai, Mount Heng, or other places to cultivate. But the biggest are the 4 great sects, Heavenly Sword Sect, Earth Sword Sect, Shenzhen Sect, and Yellow Sword Sect. Our Heavenly Sword Sect has been winning the sword conference for 30 years. So, for the past 30 years, Heavenly Sword Sect has been in charge of Mount Hua. Then, The remaining sword sects will definitely have to work hard in this sword conference. Humph, they are all trash. How can they be compared with our heavenly sword sect? Xia Hu said proudly, our heavenly sword sect has sect master Tang Yarrow, the lord of Western Mountain. Below him is my third senior martial brother, Chen Junwo, edgeless sword. When have we ever been afraid of anyone? Chapter 4:15. Xia Hu was quite confident in her own sword sect, and Li Fan had never seen the other three major sword sects, so he was not too sure about the situation. However, he could foresee that the sword conference tomorrow would be very lively. Xia Hu sent Li Fan to Chen Junwo's room. Chen Junwo was a popular person in Huashan, but the room he lived in was quite simple. It was just a small thatched hut with a simple bed and a small wooden table next to it. The floor was still plastered with cement, but it was clean. Li Fan sat down at the table, but Xia Hu did not leave. Instead, she sat on the bed. It's late, why aren't you leaving? Li Fan could not help but ask. Was this junior sister going to sleep with him? Ahem, he was thinking too much. Just now, third senior brother told me to teach junior brother the purple chi of Mount Hua. Xia Hu said, after all, there are only a few incantations. I'll pass it to you verbally, so you have to remember it. Verbally. Li Fan looked at Xia Hu's rosy lips and could not help but feel a little evil. Listen well, you must ask me if you can't remember anything. Xia Hu reminded him. All right, I'll have to trouble you, senior sister. He did not know how magical the purple chi of the East was, but since Chen Junwo said it could effectively deal with inner demons, it should have some effect. As Li Fan listened to Xia Yi reciting the chant, he listened for a while longer. He adjusted his breathing according to the tips of the breathing technique. Indeed, he felt that his hearing and vision were much better, and even his heartbeat seemed to be calmer. This breathing technique was indeed useful, allowing Li Fan to adjust his state more smoothly. Li Fan felt that using this breathing technique at a critical moment was like giving himself a shot of tranquilizer. How is it? Is it effective? When Li Fan opened his eyes, he found Xia Hu standing in front of him. She bent down and pressed her hands on her knees, looking at his face from below with a face full of concern. Well, it's quite useful. The martial arts of Mount Hua are indeed extensive and profound. Li Fan could not help but laugh. Just based on this breathing technique, his trip to Mount Hua was not in vain. That's good. Xia Hu heaved a sigh of relief. I was really worried that you would suddenly have a chi deviation or something. Haha, am I that scary? Li Fan could not help but laugh. He subconsciously stretched out his hand and touched Xia Hong's head. Little senior sister is so cute, I can't bear to hurt you. Screw you, I'm not a child, how can you touch my head? Xia Yi pushed Li Fan's hand away angrily. I'm not tall to begin with. I won't grow taller if I touch your head. Senior sister, when a girl reaches the age of 18, she basically won't grow anymore. Li Fan really couldn't bear to tell Xia Hu this cruel truth, but he couldn't let her hope for nothing. After all, he was a kind person. So, it's better for you to give up on those random thoughts. Don't lie to me. Sect leader said, 23, jump up. That's a boy. Li Fan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I'm not talking about girls, my little senior sister. Chimph, I don't believe you. I can definitely grow to 8 heads. Li Fan was speechless towards Xia Hu's expectations. This woman's thoughts were too good. 8 heads, you're doubting senior sister. Xia Hu pouted, expressing her anger towards Li Fan's doubt. Senior sister is very angry, the consequences are very serious. Yes, senior sister can definitely grow to 8 heads. No, how can 8 heads satisfy senior sister? Senior sister can grow to 10 heads, or even 100 head. Screw you, wouldn't that make me a monster? Xia Hu rolled her eyes at Li Fan. But I feel that senior sister looks very good like this. Li Fan suddenly said, I wonder why senior sister wants to grow to 8 heads. What do you know? I also want long legs. As the saying goes, a woman will dress up for the one who pleases her. Li Fan asked, which senior brother is senior sister growing taller for? Screw you, matters of love between a man and a woman cannot pique senior sister's interest. Xia Hu said confidently, moreover, I only have brotherly feelings towards those senior brothers. They are all too boring, especially eldest senior brother and third senior brother. One is a dull person, the other is a sword maniac, who would be interested in such a man. Then what kind of Prince Charming in senior sister's heart is? Li Fan's interest was piqued. Tell me about it. I know a few reliable lads, who might meet senior sister's requirements. There are men everywhere on Mount Hua. I don't need you to introduce me. Xia Yi stood on her tiptoes and patted Li Fan's shoulder. Little junior brother, senior sister appreciates your kindness. But I also advise you not to always think about these matters between men and women. It's because you always think about these things. That's why it's easy for you to go berserk. I can see that your talent is quite good. If you practice your sword well, maybe one day you can surpass me. This girl still did not understand her own strength, and when she was sparring with Chen Junhua, she only used sword techniques. The two of them did not use true qi. All right, it's already late. I won't disturb junior brother's rest. Hihi, although I don't know when you're leaving, but don't forget, on Mount Hua, you still have me, your senior sister. Xia Hu said to Li Fan with a smile, if there's anything you don't know, feel free to ask me. As long as it doesn't violate the principles of Mount Hua, I will definitely answer without holding back. Then I'll thank senior sister first. Just as Li Fan was about to say goodbye to Xia Hu, suddenly, two crisp sounds came from the roof. Although the sound was not loud, it attracted Li Fan and Xia Hu's attention. Ah, what's that sound? Xia Yi raised her head and looked at the ceiling. Is it raining outside? Senior sister, don't make a sound, it's someone's ching gong. It's the middle of the night, who's running around on the roof? It's definitely not a good person, senior sister. Do you want to go take a look with me? Li Fan thought, could it be that Yin Wuchao is here to cause trouble for him? If he brought Xia Hu over, she could be a notary, lest he and Yin Wuchao made a big fuss and it would be hard to explain to Mount Hua. All right. I also want to see who has the guts to be so presumptuous in my Mount Hua. When Xia Hu heard this, she also became angry. She placed her hand on the hilt of her sword, as if she was about to flare up, but was suppressed by Li Fan. Then follow me, senior sister. As Li Fan spoke, he used his ching gong and floated out of the door like a wisp of smoke, lightly landing on the roof. Aya, junior brother, wait for me. Xia Hu hurriedly chased after him. Her ching gong was much weaker, and it took her a lot of effort to barely catch up to Li Fan. Chapter 416. The Mount Hua sect was huge. Under the cover of the night, it was full of mystery. Meanwhile, on the peak of Mount Hua, a man in black was walking on Mount Hua under the cover of the night. His footsteps were light. Except for the sound he made when he accidentally made on Li Fan's house, he did not make any other sound. He just walked on the roofs as if he was looking for something on Mount Hua. Xia Hu followed him for a while, but she could not keep up with him. Both the man in black and Li Fan's lightness skill were better than hers. Xia Hu tried her best, but the distance between the two of them was getting farther and farther. She was a little anxious. She wanted to call Li Fan, but she was afraid that the man in black would hear her. Li Fan seemed to notice her embarrassment, so he took the initiative to slow down and hold Xia Yi's hand. Before Xia Hu could react, Li Fan had already pulled her, making her feel like she was riding on clouds. Although she had learned lightness skill and liked it, she had never realized that it could be so mysterious. It was as if she had released herself and felt so free. With Li Fan holding her hand, her body also became light. Together with Li Fan, they were like swallows in the night, gliding lightly on Mount Hua. Xia Hu could not help but widen her eyes in surprise. She covered her mouth with her other hand to prevent herself from screaming. The junior brother brought by third senior brother had a good lightness skill. The two of them followed the man in black quietly and went deep into Mount Hua. After walking for more than 10 minutes, the man in black finally slowed down. He seemed to be very confident in himself. After glancing left and right, he landed in front of a house. Xia Hu and Li Fan saw this scene from a mountain far away. Xia Hu could not help but let out a low cry. Li Fan covered her mouth gently with his hand, signaling her to lower her voice. Although they were far away, Li Fan was still worried that the man had extraordinary hearing. It would be terrible if he heard what they were doing. What happened? Li Fan transmitted his voice to Xia Yi, but Xia Yi did not know that Li Fan could use such a profound technique. She thought he was talking normally. This is Elder Rant's room. Xia Hu lowered his voice and whispered in Li Fan's ear, "It's our sword guardian elder." "Sure, let's watch first." Li Fan pressed one hand on Xia Hu's head. Although he didn't use much strength, it made Xia Hu pout. "Little junior brother is so annoying. He still treats me like a child." Li Fan stared at the man in black. He stood at the door of the room and gently knocked on the door 3 times. Then, he knocked once and twice. The door suddenly opened and only closed after the black-clothed man entered. Xia Hu widened her eyes and pointed at the room. She seemed to want to say something, but Li Fan covered her mouth. "Sure," he whispered in Xavier's ear, "I want to hear what they said." How could it be, so far away? Xia Hu was in disbelief, but Li Fan had already closed his eyes and used the east-rising purple qi breathing technique. This set of breathing techniques could indeed calm him down. Although they were at least 500 meters apart, Li Fan could still hear the conversation in the room, even though their voices were very low. "Is there anyone around?" "Don't worry, it's just me. Lord Protector, everything is ready." "Very good." Another voice in the room seemed to be suppressing his excitement. "I've waited for this day, for too long. The sect leader asked me to inform you that tomorrow, when the bell rings, the earth will cover the sky. Tell the sect leader not to worry. I'm ready. Then I'll take my leave, Protector." The voice faded, and the black-clothed man did not appear again. He seemed to have left somewhere else. Li Fan did not hesitate. He pulled Xia Hu and turned to leave the area to a safer place. "What did they say? You can't hear it, right?" "I heard some." Li Fan looked at Xia Hu. "What's your sword protector's character like?" "He's righteous," Xia Hu said without hesitation. "He's very strict. He's very strict with himself and the disciples in the sect. Looks like you, the strict guardian sword elder, are going to do something surprising." Xia Hu did not believe Li Fan's words. "You're just guessing. The sword protector elder is very upright. There's a good saying, you may know a person's face but not his heart." Li Fan smiled. "You'll see the true face of this sword protector elder sooner or later. However, this is not important. What's important is that you better not participate in the sword conference tomorrow." "How can I do that?" "The sword conference every 10 years is very interesting. I must go. I wasn't a disciple of Mount Hua last time. This time, I must participate. I've long wanted to see it." Xia Hu seemed to want to join in the fun, but Li Fan touched his chin and did not comment. "Moreover, it's the sword conference. Sect leader Tang will definitely control the situation. He's the master of West Mountain. Let's hope you're right." Li Fan shrugged. "Anyway, this is Mount Hua's matter. I can't interfere. I'm just here to watch the fun. You guys can settle the rest. Don't worry. It'll be fine. I don't know where that man in black came from. He must have been subdued by the sword protector elder." Xia Hu was very confident in her sword protector elder. He and the sword-bearing elder are sect leader Tang's right-hand men. Heavenly Sword Sect can only prosper until now because of them. Millimeter. Since that's the case, we'll see you tomorrow, little senior sister. Li Fan bid farewell to Xia Hu. It was too late. He did not want to wander around Mount Hua for too long. He did not want to be chased away as a bad guy. Just as he said, he did not belong to Mount Hua. He was just a passerby. Mount Hua's matters should be settled by Mount Hua itself. Moreover, Xia Hu trusted Tang Yarrow, the master of West Mountain, so much that Li Fan often saw this name in the Jianghu app. The master of Mount Hua. Because of him, Heavenly Sword Sect had a stable position on Mount Hua. When Li Fan returned to his room, Chen Junhua was already sitting inside. "How's the night view of Mount Hua?" Chen Junhua didn't suspect anything else. He just symbolically asked Li Fan. "It's not bad. The view is beautiful, but it's a bit cold." "What about the purple qi from the east? Did it affect you?" "It's a good help. Your suggestion is indeed useful. Li Fan was very grateful to Chen Junhua. The purple qi from the east provided by Chen Junhua had helped him a lot. Mount Hua is indeed a famous sect with hundreds of years of history. Even a simple breathing technique is so powerful. Li Fan said honestly, "If I can stay here longer, I think I'll gain more." "Why? Can't you stay longer?" Chen Junhua might be simple, but he was not stupid. He instantly understood the meaning behind Li Fan's words. Chapter 417. It's nothing. In short, you have to pay more attention to tomorrow's sword conference. If he were to tell Chen Junhua that his sword protection elder was a spy, he would not believe it. After all, the sword protection elder had lived with him for so many years, and he had only known him for a few days. "Brother Li, the two of us can be considered friends, right?" Chen Junhua asked. "Of course, I like to make friends." Li Fan nodded, "Especially a simple friend like Xiao Hua. I need more friends like you." As Li Fan spoke, he winked at Chen Junhua, "But believe me, you are unique." "That's good." Chen Junhua told Li Fan, "Since we are friends, we should be honest with each other. If you have anything to say, just say it." "Huh? Do you really want to say it?" "I won't force it." Chen Junhua's expression had always been so straightforward, "But I will be honest with you." Li Fan was speechless for a long time. "Damn, all right, I will say it." Li Fan told Chen Junhua what he had heard and guessed, word for word. "Do you feel that what I said is like a fantasy?" Li Fan looked at Chen Junhua's expression, as if he was observing his thoughts. "No, I believe you." However, Chen Junhua said firmly. "Oh, why?" "Because you don't have to lie to me." Chen Junhua pondered for a moment, "But I'm afraid I can't tell the sect leader about this. He won't believe it." Sometimes, Chen Junhua's cleverness surprised Li Fan. This guy, although he was silent, he was not stupid. "Tomorrow, I will pay attention to the sword protection elder." As Chen Junhua said, he began to undress. "Fuck, what are you doing?" "Sleeping, my bed is small, let's sleep together tonight." Chen Junhua pointed to his simple bed. "Then why are you taking off your clothes? Don't you need to take off your clothes to sleep?" Li Fan was speechless for a long time. In the end, he said, "I think I can introduce a friend to you." "Who?" "His name is Yang Kai. You will like him." "Oh, sure. I've heard of his name. I've always been fascinated by him." Chen Junhua obviously did not understand what Li Fan meant. "If there's a chance, I hope to get to know him and see his Tai Chi Kung Fu." "Forget it. I can't talk to you. Let's go to sleep." Li Fan pointed at the roof. "I'll sleep on the roof." "How can we do that? This is not how Mount Hua treats its guests." Chen Junhua obviously didn't agree to Li Fan's suggestion. "It's okay. It's hard to see such a beautiful starry sky outside." Li Fan didn't care. "Moreover, sleeping in the cold will train my Zhenqi's self-protection ability. This is a good training method." "Then let me sleep with you." Chen Junhua's words were too ambiguous. "Lil Hua, what you should learn is swordsmanship, not Zhenqi strengthening." Li Fan hurriedly persuaded him. "My training method isn't suitable for you." "You're right." Chen Junhua was successfully fooled by Li Fan. He laid on the bed. "Then let's meet tomorrow morning. There's a sword conference tomorrow." "Brother Li, rest early." "No problem. See you tomorrow." Li Fan finally heaved a sigh of relief. He flipped over and landed on the roof, lying on the snow. He looked up at the starry sky. At the same time, he switched his meridians and entered a different mental cultivation method. As he operated the mental cultivation method, he kept staring at the vast Milky Way. The universe was really too vast. It was boundless and beyond the imagination of humans. Li Fan couldn't help but think. In this universe, he couldn't even be considered a small boat. He was too small. And what could he, who was so small, do? But without a doubt, he was also a part of the universe. It was the countless versions of himself that formed the universe. Then, he should become the most outstanding one among the countless versions of himself. Li Fan felt that the mental cultivation method in his body was starting to boil. When he was looking at the universe, Li Fan's mental cultivation method also improved rapidly. He was very surprised. He usually worked so hard to cultivate this mental cultivation method, but he couldn't improve it in the slightest. But now, when he was looking at the universe, his mental cultivation method improved. Could it be absorbing the essence of the sun and moon? Damn, this was bullshit. Li Fan carefully thought about it. It was probably because when he was looking at the universe, his inner state might be different. When it came to practicing martial arts, physical training was only one kind. But mental training was also an important step. Li Fan seemed to enjoy this feeling. He just laid there with his arms open, staring at the vast universe. At this moment, Li Fan no longer breathed through his nose. He simultaneously opened all the pores in his body and breathed along with him. This way, his mental cultivation method circulated even faster. As for Li Fan, it was as if he could feel the universe revolving within his body. This internal energy was too magical. Li Fan temporarily named this martial art stellar divine technique. This way, it would be in line with the meaning and feeling of this mental cultivation method. He seemed to be able to feel the snow around him melting. This magical feeling indeed made him feel very comfortable. Li Fan felt that his stellar divine technique had even greater potential. His true qi spread out from his pores and spread to the surroundings. This kind of true qi control technique was far broader than the sky-swallowing toad. This feeling of being able to control everything made Li Fan feel an addictive pleasure. When Li Fan reacted, his true qi had already begun to circulate on its own. His pores automatically opened and closed, frantically absorbing energy from the surrounding air. At this moment, Li Fan felt that all the martial artists on Mount Hua were losing their true qi bit by bit. Then, the lost true qi merged into the air like a galaxy, revolving around him and then entering his body through his pores. This feeling, very powerful, and very terrifying. Although Li Fan wanted to control it very much, he was really addicted. This kind of pleasure made him a little unable to stop. As long as he breathed, a large amount of true qi would enter his body. He could clearly feel that his body was constantly becoming stronger. It was just a reverse martial art, but it gave him such a terrifying feeling. Stellar divine technique. This martial art was really too terrifying. And when Li Fan was absorbing the surrounding true qi, his inner demon seemed to be roaring. Li Fan immediately forced himself to stop. He had to control it within a certain range. Otherwise, the inner demon would breed again and he would very likely go berserk, destroying everything. Li Fan slapped himself hard and calmed down. Chapter 4:18. In the following period of time, Li Fan didn't cultivate anymore. Instead, he consolidated the strength in his body. It wasn't a good thing to improve his strength too quickly. Although Li Fan hadn't cultivated for a long time, he deeply understood this principle. It was easy to become a demon in one day, but difficult to cultivate for 1,000 years. The faster one cultivated and grew, the more unstable one's state of mind would be. It was like a person who slowly earned money and became rich bit by bit. He knew how to take care of his own wealth. But if it was a nouveau riche, he wouldn't know how to deal with his wealth. Squandering it was a common thing. And it was the same for people who suddenly inherited great power. For example, some second-generation rich people would also squander the wealth that the previous generation had worked hard to earn. Li Fan had this kind of awareness. If he wanted to cultivate a divine technique, it was naturally possible. Increasing his speed appropriately was also a good choice. But if it was too fast, it wouldn't be good. Not choosing to continue absorbing true qi, Li Fan began to consolidate his strength. This was the most correct choice. During this process, Li Fan was still using the breathing technique of Mount Hua to adjust his state of mind. Li Fan gradually calmed down. After a certain period, he also entered a deep sleep. The night quietly passed and the sun rose again. The Mount Hua today was different from the past. It was unknown how many experts had come here and gathered on Mount Hua. These experts all had different appearances, but every one of them had one thing in common, which was that they all carried a treasured sword. The people of the heaven, earth, black, and yellow sword sects had all arrived at the peak of Mount Hua, waiting for the Sword Discourse Conference. On the peak of Mount Hua, it was unknown how many years it took to build a huge observatory. This observatory was a beautiful 8 trigrams stone platform. Half of it was next to the cliff, while the other half was outside the cliff. On the 2 sides of this observatory, there were 2 huge sculptures of human figures. These 2 figures were said to be the 2 founders of Mount Hua. And each of them had 2 disciples. The 4 of them founded the 4 major sword sects. Since then, there had been endless disputes. In the end, the rule of the Sword Discourse Conference was set. Once every 10 years, the next master of Mount Hua would be chosen in the Sword Discourse Conference. This is the Sword Conference. Xia Yi followed beside Li Fan, looking at the swordsman from outside with some excitement. There are so many people today, almost catching up to the usual tourist. Don't make a fuss. There are thousands of tourists. If it's a holiday, it'll be even scarier. Li Fan patted Xia Hu's head and said, there are about 200 to 300 swordsmen. Although there are quite a few of them, it's not shocking enough. As if you've seen something grand, Chen-ph. Believe me, I've been through the Spring Festival. Xia Yi obviously didn't understand what Li Fan meant, but it couldn't suppress her curiosity. Look, the cultivators from the other sword sects have arrived. Xia Ming pointed. Li Fan also carefully sized up the swordsmen. Most of their clothes only had 4 colors. The one from Heavenly Sword faction was mainly white while the one from Earth Sword faction was black. The Shenzhen sect had a green hue, so the Huang Zhen sect naturally had a yellow hue. The people from the 4 sword sects only had one goal, and that was to become the champion of this sword conference. The sword conference is divided into 2 parts. One part is for the younger generation to compete, and the other part is for the sect leaders to compete. Xia Hu was still introducing to Li Fan, but the sword conference is cruel. The arena master must be able to defend the stage. That is indeed very cruel. It's a battle of attrition. Li Fan saw that Chen Junhua was already warming up, ready to go on stage at any time. The master of the West Mountain, Tang Yarrow, also stood at the highest position with an extraordinary aura. On his left and right stood 2 people who were about the same age as him. The one on the left had his arms crossed. His face was cold like an ice mountain. The other was wearing an iron mask so his face couldn't be seen. However, other than his own sword, he was also carrying Tang Yarrow's sword. The one with the cold face was the sword protecting Elder, and the one with the iron mask was the sword holding Elder. The 2 of them had similar strength and were Tang Yarrow's left and right arms. In front of him were a few experts wearing other colored clothes. They were the sect leaders of the other sword sects. Sect leader Tang, we haven't seen each other for a long time. The sect leader in black did not seem to have a good attitude. This year's master of Mount Hua should be replaced. Sect leader Wang, long time no see. Your temper is still as straightforward as ever. Tang Yarrow laughed and said, as for who can become the master of Mount Hua, it will depend on their own sword techniques. Sect leader Wang, in these 10 years, I wonder if your sword techniques have improved. Don't worry, I guarantee that you will be satisfied. Sect leader Wang, it's time for you to change your temper. The sect leader of the Yellow Sword sect, Ning Peng, said, under the leadership of sect leader Tang, Mount Hua is getting better and better. Sect leader Chen, don't you think so? The sect leader of the Shenzhen sect was called Chen Xian, and he looked like an honest person. He nodded, yes, it's good that it's stable, it's good that it's stable. Don't the 2 of you want to sit at the peak of Mount Hua? The sect leader of the Earth Sword sect was called Wang Runliang. He angrily pointed at a throne on the mountain peak. Don't the 2 of you want it? Aya, my strength is not enough. As long as I can manage those little brats of the Yellow Sword sect, it's enough. Ning Peng laughed, what about reaching the peak? I've never thought about it. Sect leader Chen, have you thought about it? Chen Xian immediately shook his head, it's too far away. It's good that it's stable, it's good that it's stable, 2 disappointing fellows. Wang Runliang choked with anger. Obviously, these 2's attitude disappointed him. Wang Runliang, don't even think about it. The sword-guarding elder scolded, Shenzhen sect and Yellow Sword sect have always supported our sect leader Tang. If you want to reach the peak of Mount Hua, then you have to beat our sect leader Tang in sword techniques. Mph, my sword technique today will definitely surprise you. Wang Runliang touched his own sword. No rush, no rush. Tang Yarrow had a good temper. He was not angry, and said slowly, let the younger generation first exchange pointers. Between you and me, we'll decide who's better later. Good. This year, our Earth Sword sect has a few talents. They're not any worse than your Chen Junhua. Wang Runliang said confidently, when the younger generation loses to our Earth Sword sect, don't you cry. Why would I? Everyone is exchanging pointers to make our Mount Hua sect stronger. With outstanding young disciples, I can't wait to be happy. Why would I cry? Heh, save the good words for later. Wang Runliang seemed a bit impatient. The sun is already up, let's start. I can't wait to enter the peak of Mount Hua. Chapter 419. The sun rose high above the mountain stream, and the bright sunlight shone on the observatory. Half of the observatory was shining with light, as if yin and yang were the two extremes. Hundreds of Huashan disciples surrounded the cliff, waiting for the start of the Sword Discourse Conference. It's starting, it's starting. Xia Yi tiptoed and tried her best to look inside. However, there were too many people in front, and she was short, so it was difficult for her to see. Damn it, why are there so many tall people in front? I can't even see them. Senior sister, do you want to ride on my neck? Li Fan asked. Screw you. I'm not a kid. Xia Yi rolled her eyes at Li Fan. I don't want to ride on your neck, I'll be laughed at. Then I'll carry senior sister and watch. Li Fan didn't allow her to say anything. He directly carried Xia Yi from behind and raised her a little higher. Because he was a martial artist, Li Fan's body was very sturdy, and Xia Yi was not heavy, so Li Fan did not feel tired lifting her up. Xia Yi blushed a little as she was lifted up by Li Fan. But this way, she could clearly see the fight in the center of the arena. Because Heavenly Sword Sect was the master of Huashan, Heavenly Sword Sect disciples were responsible for guarding the arena. At this moment, a young disciple from Huashan Heavenly Sword Sect was fighting with a Yellow Sword Sect disciple. As for Chen Junhua, as the last expert of Heavenly Sword Sect, it was impossible for him to make a move so early. This year, the disciples of other sword sects are also very powerful. Xia Yi was very excited, as if she could not wait to go down and fight with them. Her body carried a faint lily fragrance, and because her nose was very close to Li Fan's, the fragrance also tickled Li Fan's nose. Little senior sister, do you want to go down and fight? Li Fan suddenly asked. How can I do it? Xia Yi hurriedly shook her head. I haven't practiced my swordsmanship well. If I go up on stage like this, I will definitely be laughed at and embarrass our Heavenly Sword Sect. Little senior sister, don't be afraid. I'll help you. Li Fan's voice rang in Xia Yi's ears, making her ears feel a little itchy. How can you help me? Little senior sister will naturally know when she goes up to compete. Mph, I don't want to go. You must be trying to trick me. How could that be? When have I ever deceived little senior sister? For some reason, Li Fan's voice gave Xia Yi a very calm feeling. Furthermore, one should practice martial arts more in actual combat. This sword discussion assembly is a rare opportunity for senior sister. Li Fan was like a demon, constantly tempting this little senior sister. Whether I win or lose, it will be of great help to senior sister's future cultivation. You're right, Xia, who was tempted by Li Fan's words. At that moment, the disciple from the Heavenly Sword faction had been defeated. The young swordsman from the Yellow Sword faction raised his sword arrogantly and asked, who else? Is there anyone else from the Heavenly Sword faction who dares to fight? Li Fan did not give Xia Hu a chance to think, and directly pushed her from behind. Xia Hu's body immediately flew out, and under the surprised gazes of the Huashan Heavenly Sword faction disciples, she landed on the arena. Why did little junior sister go up? Little junior sister is so bold. Because Xia Hu's strength was not strong, when she went up on the arena, it attracted the discussion of her fellow disciples. It's fine. Big senior brother Yang Yuansheng smiled, Little junior sister's experience is shallow, it's good to let her broaden her horizons. Since big senior brother said it was fine, the other disciples did not say anything, but there were still some people who were worried that little junior sister would get injured. We are all Huashan disciples, so we will naturally not overdo it. Everyone, don't worry. Yang Yuansheng kept his hands in his sleeves and looked at Xia Hu on the arena. Opposite Xia Hu was the disciple from the Yellow Sword faction. He held his sword, looked at Xia Hu, and laughed. Hihi, Huashan only has such a delicate and pretty girl. But looking at you, do you think you can take 2 of my sword strikes? The other party's mockery obviously angered Xia Hu. She hugged her sword and cupped her hands at the other party. Huashan Heavenly Sword faction, Xia Hu. Huashan Yellow Sword faction, Yarrow Gang. Just as Yarrow Gang from the Yellow Sword faction finished speaking, his body suddenly appeared in front of Xia Hu, and the sword in his hand directly stabbed at Xia Hu 3 times in a row. Swoosh, 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 the 3 strikes were as fast as shadows. It was the Huashan sword technique's 3 friends of winter. Although the sword techniques of the 4 major sword factions were different, there was still a subtle difference. The Heavenly Sword faction focused on sword intent, while the Earth Sword faction focused on sword techniques. On the other hand, the Shenzhen faction and the Yellow Sword faction both preferred fast swords. The 3 Friends of Winter was performed by Yarrow Gang, and it was as fast as lightning. Xia Hu was stunned for a moment. Although she usually sparred with her senior brothers, most of the time, it was because her senior brothers deliberately let her fight. Moreover, the 3 Friends of Winter was slightly different from the one she practiced. It was so fast that she could not see it clearly. She was a little flustered, and also a little regretful. Why did she listen to her junior brother's bewitchment and come to the arena? If she was defeated in one move, wouldn't it be embarrassing for Huashan? But at this critical moment, Xia Hu's body suddenly trembled. She felt as if her body was wrapped up by something, and then she could not help but move on her own. She raised the charming gentle sword in her right hand, and at that moment, Xia Hu felt as if she had seen her opponent's flaw. Her hand continued to move on its own, holding the charming gentle sword. She instantly wrapped it around Yarrow Gang's sword, and then flicked it. Clang! Yarrow Gang's sword was flicked away, and Xia Hu's long sword was pressed against Yarrow Gang's neck. Yarrow Gang's face was flushed red. Xia Hu was also very surprised. At this moment, Li Fan's voice rang in Xia Hu's ears. Don't worry, leave it to me. Xia Hu was shocked. What method did this junior brother use? Although Li Fan was standing in the distance, he had already switched to the Star Luo Divine technique state. He made his true chi look like a coat and draped it over Xia Hu's body. This way, he only needed to control his true chi to control Xia Hu's movements. Senior sister, just relax. Let me do the rest. Li Fan continued to transmit his voice. Senior sister, you only need to seriously experience this match. Xia Hu did not dare to make a sound, afraid that others would see through her. But how did junior brother do it, to actually be able to control his own body? Could it be that when he was hugging me, did he use some kind of method? But before Xia Hu could figure it out, the next Shenzhen sect opponent had already jumped up. Let me experience junior sister Xia's great move. His feet stepped on the Qing Gong, his body quickly moved in the air, and the long sword in his hand continuously danced. Huashan sword technique, Cloud Dragon 5 appearances. This move was powerful because of the strangeness of the sword technique, making people unable to grasp it. This was a high-level sword technique in Huashan sword technique. He did not expect the opponent to use such a sword technique. In this way, even Yang Yuansheng was a little worried. Chapter 420. The Shenzhen sect disciples' Cloud Dragon 5 appearance was not only strange, it was also extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, it was already in front of Xia Yi. But Xia Yi only turned her body, the charming gentle sword in her hand was raised again, easily entangling the Shenzhen sect disciples' Cloud Dragon 5 appearance. Clang! Xia Yi swept her sword, and the Cloud Dragon 5 appearance was beheaded. The Shenzhen sect disciple's sword was sent flying, and his body fell down, falling onto the ground. Wow! Junior sister is so powerful, what sword technique is that? The Heavenly Sword sect disciples started to discuss, and young Yuansheng said, "It is her self-created charming gentle sword technique. But, this is the first time I've seen it actually work." Although Xia Yi had created a charming gentle sword technique, no one from Huashan's sect felt that this move was useful. It was more like a gorgeous sugar coat. Chen Junhua frowned. With his junior sister's talent, would she be able to comprehend the true essence of this move in a day? "Tang Yao, you bastard, this is not Huashan's sword technique." Wang Runliang immediately protested, "This is Huashan's sword discourse assembly, how can you use outside sword technique?" "Oh, sorry, this is my Huashan disciples' self-created sword technique, naturally it is Huashan sword technique." Tang Yao was a little happy. After the sword discourse assembly, you guys can also learn this move. Humph. Wang Runliang snorted heavily, as though he was extremely dissatisfied. But his eyes never left Xia Yi. After all, Xia Yi's charming gentle thistle technique had truly surprised him. This move seemed to be specialized in restraining sword techniques. No matter what kind of sword technique the opponent used, they would all be sent flying by Xia Yi's sword. "Chunlin, it's time for you to show off your skills," Wang Runliang called out loudly. A young expert with long black hair carried his sword with him. With a flip of his body, he somersaulted in the air and landed lightly on the observatory platform. He glanced at Xia Hu, who was opposite him. "You can go down." He was extremely arrogant, with one hand on the sword hilt, and the other hand hanging by his leg. "My opponent is not you. Although you look powerful, isn't it too rude to look down on others?" Xia Yi was unhappy again. Why did so many people look down on him? He had clearly trained hard with the sword, but why did everyone look at him with colored glasses? It was too uncomfortable. Xia Hu decided to prove herself. She told Li Fan, "I want to do it myself." Although others could not understand it, Li Fan heard it clearly. "This person is very strong," Li Fan could not help but remind him. "I don't care. I want to do it myself." Xia Hu lost her temper. "If you don't agree, I'll cut all ties with you." Li Fan was helpless. This little girl had become willful. At first, Li Fan wanted to intervene. However, when he saw Xia Hu's serious expression, he seemed to be moved. Although Xia Yi was a girl, at this moment, he saw the shadow of himself in Xia Yi. This lass, she was indeed serious. Li Fan sighed and loosened his control. Xia Hu's body became more at ease. She raised her charming gentle sword, assumed the stance of the Huashan sword style, and looked at the Earth Sword sect disciple in front of her. "Huashan Earth Sword School, young Chunlin." The other party said his name calmly. "Hua Mountain's Heavenly Sword Faction, Xia Hui, please enlighten me." Xia Hu was completely focused. As if she was facing a great enemy, she began to attack young Chunlin. Needless to say, this little girl Xia Hu's foundation was quite solid. She used her Huashan sword style. Although it was nothing special, it was steady and there was nothing wrong with it. On the other hand, young Chunlin didn't even draw his sword. He only held the scabbard and blocked Xia Hu's attacks. To Xia Hu, this was obviously a big blow. He was looking down on her too much. Xia Hu was not happy. Her attacks were obviously getting impatient. Young Chunlin took advantage of an opening and blocked Xia Hu's sword. Then, he patted her shoulder with his palm. Bam! Xia Hu flew out and fell on the ground. She grimaced in pain. Li Fan shook his head. Xia Hu still needed more training in the way of the sword. This girl was too impatient. Annoying. She was very angry. She stood up and picked up her sword at the same time. Time to end this. Young Chunlin suddenly appeared in front of her. The scabbard in his hand was aimed at Xia Hu's acupuncture point. But at that moment, Xia Hu raised her charming sword and wrapped it around young Chunlin's sword. Then, she flicked it. Clang. Young Chunlin's sword was bounced off, but it didn't bounce out of his hand. Li Fan was obviously a little surprised. Although the charming thorns move just now was still a little rough, it was successfully executed by Xia Hu. It seemed that this girl was quite powerful. After being controlled by him to use the sword a few times, she already had some muscle memory. Xia Hu was also a little surprised. She looked at the familiar charming sword. This move. She used it. It was strange. It was a sword technique that she created. Why was she so happy to be able to use it? Before Xia Hu could feel happy, young Chuanlin's scabbard had already touched Xia Hu's shoulder. Xia Hu couldn't control her body and fell from the observatory. She was caught by her two senior brothers. Xia Hu, your performance was very good. Just when Xia Yi was a little upset, sect leader Tang Yarrow personally walked over and patted her shoulder. The hope of Huashan rests on you youngsters. Do your best. Thank you, sect leader. Thank you. Xia Hu was extremely happy. This was the first time she was praised by the sect leader. So happy. She had been in Huashan for so many years, but she had always been reprimanded. Leave the rest to your senior brothers. Tang Yarrow said and flicked his sleeve. Yuansheng, go down and try your junior brother's sword technique. Yes, master. Young Yuansheng bowed, then stepped on the wind and jumped onto the stage. You are not my opponent. Young Chunlin didn't look at this eldest disciple of Heavenly Sword Sect. He still lowered his head and gently stroked his scabbard. Junior brother Yang, I am really sorry. If you want to see my third junior brother, you have to go through me first. Young Yuansheng pulled out his sword. Then I will send you off first. Young Chunlin was very arrogant. He still didn't pull out the scabbard and just stood there. Young Yuansheng first bowed and politely reported his name. Then he charged towards young Chunlin with his sword. Li Fan crossed his arms. Seeing this sword, he couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. As expected of the eldest disciple of Heavenly Sword Sect. This sword was indeed stunning. In almost an instant, young Yuansheng's sword was already in front of young Chunlin. Huashan sword technique, Azure Dragon out of water. Chapter 421. Blue Dragon out of water, a sword like a rainbow. This sword instantly pierced young Chuanlin's forehead. It was fast, accurate, and ruthless. There was no flaw at all. But young Chunlin raised his scabbard and used the same blue dragon out of water, accurately hitting the tip of young Yuansheng's sword. Dang! Young Yuansheng's sword was bounced off. Although he was surprised, he did not hesitate. The sword in his hand continued to attack, as if he wanted to force young Chunlin to pull out his sword. But young Chunlin did not panic. Instead, he easily dealt with young Yuansheng's attack. Young Yuansheng's character was gentle. His sword art was big and wide, with the air of a general. As for young Chuanlin's sword art, it was hard to tell what style it was. Basically, whatever sword move young Yuansheng used, he would use the same sword move and then suppress young Yuansheng. Li Fan could not help but shake his head. This young Chunlin was too arrogant. He looked down on people like this. Even if young Yuansheng had a good temper, he should be angry, right? But young Yuansheng was still not angry. He just attacked methodically. But after dozens of moves, young Yuansheng still did not have any achievements. Li Fan crossed his arms, watching the show while studying the two's sword art. Li Fan's own martial arts were different from these experts. His 7-hero fist could usually defeat the enemy in one move within 10 moves. Li Fan liked a straightforward fighting style. That kind of slow fighting style was too boring for him. Although young Yuansheng and young Chuanlin's sword art was not bad, after fighting for so long, there was no clear winner. Li Fan could not help but yawn. It's about time. Young Chunlin seemed to be tired of it. Defeating you now is not a loss of face for you. With that, young Chunlin suddenly blocked young Yuansheng's move. Then, he lifted his leg and kicked young Yuansheng, kicking him off the observatory platform. One had to say, this young Chunlin was quite powerful. Li Fan commented. He was different from other sword sect disciples. He did not stick to his own sword art. He often liked to use his fists and feet to subdue his enemies. Thanks for letting me win, that was all young Chunlin said. As for young Yuansheng, he silently stood up and tidied his clothes. Next, he politely cupped his fists towards young Chunlin before turning around and returning to the group of disciples from Heavenly Sword faction. Do you see that? Ha ha ha. Wang Runliang couldn't help but laugh heartily. Chunlin is the disciple I'm most proud of. He's destined to make a killing this year. Chunlin is a good kid, but his character is a little arrogant. This will be detrimental to his future growth. Tang Yarrow began to worry. Humph. He is my disciple. I can worry about him myself. It is not up to you, someone from Heavenly Sword faction, to worry about him. Sect leader Wang, we're all disciples of Mount Hua. You shouldn't say that. Let's talk about this again when I become the head of the sect. Wang Runliang seemed to be confident of his victory, and young Chunlin had defeated a few more challengers. Finally, he could not hold it in any longer and pointed his scabbard at Chen Junwo, who was standing calmly below. Chen Junwo, you. Come up. Senior brother Yang is fighting to his heart's content. I don't want to dampen your spirits. Chen Junwo answered honestly. Ha. Your words are really arrogant. Young Chunlin sneered. Everyone says I'm arrogant, but in my opinion, you, Chen Junwo, are the most arrogant person in Mount Hua. I don't agree with senior brother Yang's words. Chen Junwo's words drove young Chunlin crazy. I only like to practice my sword. Winning or losing doesn't matter to me. If senior brother Yang likes it, you can have this victory. No. Come up here. Young Chunlin looked like a person with a poker face. At this moment, he was angered by Chen Junwo. Junwo, go down and spar with your senior brother Yang. Tang Yarrow clapped his hands and instructed. Yes. Chen Junwo still obeyed the sect leader's order. He carried the great sword on his back and jumped onto the observatory platform, standing in front of young Chunlin. Senior brother Yang, please. Unsheath your sword. Young Chunlin knew the secret of Chen Junwo's great sword. He immediately requested. Well, if you want to see my sword, you can only rely on senior brother's strength. Chen Junwo's words finally angered young Chunlin. It was no wonder. Although young Chunlin was a genius, it seemed that the world only knew of Mount Hua's Chen Junwo. No one knew of Mount Hua's young Chunlin. A mountain cannot hold two tigers. In the past, young Chunlin had always thought of Chen Junwo as his opponent. But today, he wanted to completely defeat him. Li Fan finally became interested and cheered up. Xia, who also unknowingly squeezed back to his side. She pointed at the observatory platform and said, Third senior brother finally went up. He will definitely teach that arrogant ghost a lesson. Both of their sword techniques are not bad. It's worth watching. Li Fan nodded. Xia, who lowered her voice and asked, Junior brother, what did you do just now? Xia, who was asking about how Li Fan controlled her body. It's like he was possessed. It sounds so scary, but it's actually very simple. I will explain it to senior sister later. If I was rude to senior sister, I hope senior sister can forgive me. Li Fan cupped his hands. Xia, who generously said, it's all right. At least it gave senior sister some courage. In the next sword conference, I must rely on my own strength to defeat those fellows who look down on me. Senior sister is right. Ah, they're fighting. Hearing Xia whose words, Li Fan immediately turned his gaze back. Chen Junwo and young Chunlin finally fought together. Young Chunlin didn't hide anymore. He simply pulled out his sword and directly stabbed at Chen Junwo. On the other hand, Chen Junwo raised his great sword and beautifully executed the Charming Thorns move, immediately sending young Chunlin's longsword flying. Dang! Young Chunlin was taken aback. His body flipped in the air and he once again pulled out his sword. This move, Charming Thorns, was created by my junior sister. Please remember it. Chen Junwo proved the name of this move, making Xia who unbearably excited. Ayaya, it's all thanks to my third senior brother. This move is much more powerful than me. If you practice hard, you will also be this powerful. Li Fan comforted her. But my talent is not as high as senior brothers. Hard work can make up for a lack of talent. Ch, are you saying that I'm stupid? Xia who pouted and wrinkled her nose as she looked at Li Fan, causing Li Fan to tremble. Damn it, why is this girl's point of view different from mine? I am obviously comforting her, but why did I make her angry? Chen Junwo, don't look down on me. Young Chunlin held his sword and pointed it at Chen Junwo. Today, I will let you know that you are not the only one on Mount Hua. Young Chunlin's sword was sent flying. To him, this is simply a humiliation. He looked at the biggest enemy in his life and brought out his full strength. Chapter 422. Earth Sword Faction is good at endless sword techniques. Huashan Faction's sword techniques are very simple because Sky Sword Faction advocates sword intent. But Earth Sword Faction is different. They can transform each technique into dozens of techniques, making their sword techniques extremely complicated. Seeing Yang Chuanlin's Huashan sword technique, even Tang Yarrow couldn't help but applaud. Yang Chunlin is indeed my Huashan Faction's disciple. His sword technique is outstanding, very good. You still have the mood to praise my disciple? Wang Runliang sneered, soon, your disciple will lose. Don't look down on Junhua. Tang Yarrow wasn't the least bit anxious. Instead, he leisurely said, he is my disciple that I have painstakingly trained. I believe in his strength. You are the same as your disciple. Both are very arrogant. Wang Runliang curled his lips. Huashan Faction being managed by people like you will collapse sooner or later. Huashan Faction's strength can still last for a few hundred years. Our sword Dao is not destroyed. This is the reason why we are strong. That's all nonsense. Wang Runliang snorted, don't give me a chance. Once I do, I will definitely defeat you and put you in a place of no return. It's time for you to change that temper of yours. Tang Yarrow sat there, smiling as he asked his eldest disciple Yang Yuansheng who was standing behind him. Yuansheng, between the two of them, who do you think will win? Although junior brother Yang's sword technique is sharp, he doesn't understand the power of sword intent. Yang Yuansheng said, in less than 3 moves, junior brother Yang will lose. Nonsense. Chunlin will win. Just as Wang Runliang finished speaking, Chen Junhua had already knocked away Yang Chuanlin's sword. Your sword only has technique but no sword intent. Chen Junhua reminded Yang Chunlin who was half kneeling there, communicate with your sword. It won't do you any harm. None of your business. Yang Chunlin seemed to be a bit mad. 1 year later, I will take your head. With that, Yang Chunlin didn't even want his sword and directly jumped down from the observation platform. Although it was a 10,000 feet cliff, this person's qinggong is not bad. He won't die here. Chunlin, Wang Runliang's eyes were bloodshot, but Tang Yarrow pressed down on his shoulder. It's time for him to gain some experience. Tang Yarrow said, you've kept him by your side too long, sect leader Wang. Damn it. Wang Runliang gritted his teeth. If anything happens to my precious disciple, I won't let you off. Don't worry, you have the bearing of an expert. Tang Yarrow glanced around. There were no other challengers on the platform. Looks like the young arena master for this swords conference is Heavenly Sword Faction's Chen Junhua. That's all for the entertainment. Time to get to the main topic. Wang Runliang urged. Good, good, good. Since Sect Master Wang is in such a hurry, I will officially announce that the sword conference will enter the second stage. With that, Tang Yarrow used his qinggong and landed on the observatory. I will be the ringmaster. The remaining challengers can come on stage. Following Tang Yarrow, the Sword Protector Elder and the Sword Bearer Elder flew down and stood at the edge of the observatory. Wang Runliang couldn't wait any longer and jumped onto the observatory. This year's West Mountain Master will be me. He seemed to be confident of his victory. The Sword Bearer Elder and the Sword Protector Elder walked over together. The Sword Bearer Elder held Tang Yarrow's sword while the Sword Protector Elder held a silver basin. Sect leader Wang, let's begin. Tang Yarrow stretched out his hand and washed his hand in the Sword Protector Elder's basin. Then, he reached for his own sword. But at that moment, the Sword Protector Elder suddenly raised the basin and the water inside sprayed towards Tang Yarrow. Almost subconsciously, Tang Yarrow swung his sleeves to block the water. The Sword Protector Elder directly pulled out Tang Yarrow's West Mountain sword from the Sword Bearer Elder's hand and stabbed towards Tang Yarrow. The Sword Bearer Elder was shocked. He pulled out his own sword from his back and prepared to help the sect leader. The sect leaders of Shenzhen Faction and Huangjian Faction who were watching from the side all flew down and jumped onto the platform, fighting with the Sword Protector Elder. Xia, who was stunned by the sudden change in the arena. Junior brother. Did his words come true? The Sword Protector Elder really teamed up with the Earth Sword faction to rebel? Jin Cheng, what are you doing? Tang Yarrow retreated as he scolded the Sword Protector Elder in front of him. What am I doing? Do you even need to ask? The Sword Protector Elder's voice was cold as he chased after Tang Yarrow. I'm going to kill you. He really came. Chen Junhua was about to attack, but his senior brother Yang Yuansheng was faster. He suddenly jumped up and jumped towards his master. Master, I'm coming to help you. He used the Cloud Dragon's 5 appearances in the air and shouted, You bastard, I'm going to kill you. In the blink of an eye, he was already behind the Sword Protector Elder and stabbed towards him. But the Sword Protector Elder lowered his body and dodged his attack. Yang Yuansheng landed next to his master and said, Master, your disciple is coming to help you. Yuansheng, you're not his opponent, quickly dodge. Before Tang Yarrow could finish speaking, Yang Yuansheng suddenly stabbed his sword into his rib. Tang Yarrow's eyes widened as the Sword Protector Elder's sword stabbed towards Tang Yarrow's throat. Scram! The head of the Earth Sword School, Wang Runliang, suddenly made his move. He flew forward and used the 3 Friends of Winter to knock away the Sword Protector Elder's sword. At the same time, he kicked Yang Yuansheng away. Bastard! You dare to kill your master! Wang Runliang's hair was trembling and his eyes were red like an angry lion. Runliang, Tang Yarrow, are you okay? Wang Runliang supported Tang Yarrow and glanced worriedly at his wound. I'm fine, I've never been so weak. Tang Yarrow stood up straight. Yang Yuansheng patted his dirty clothes and smiled at Wang Runliang. Head Wang, haven't you always wanted to be the master of West Mountain? You should be happy that I killed Tang Yarrow. Bullshit. Wang Runliang angrily cursed, I want to be the master of West Mountain because of my skills, my swordsmanship. When did I ever use such despicable methods? Bastard, Tang Yarrow was blind, how did he raise a bastard like you? Don't be angry, let me ask him. While Tang Yarrow and the others were talking, Chen Junhua silently stood beside him. The disciples of Huashan Heavenly Sword School and Earth Sword School were confronting the disciples of Shenzhen School and Huangjian School. 2 Shenzhen School disciples wanted to grab Xia Hu but were kicked to the ground by Li Fan. Junior brother. They're crazy. Xia Hu's face was pale. She couldn't believe it. How did it suddenly become like this? Don't worry, it's okay. Li Fan protected Xia Hu. On the other side, Tang Yarrow endured his wound and asked his disciple. Yuansheng, why did you do this? Chapter 423. Tang Yarrow covered his wound. His face showed no anger or anything else as he stared at his eldest disciple. Master, you've been the sect leader of Hua Mountain for too long. A few Shenzhen and Huangjian sect experts landed beside Yang Yuansheng to protect him. While Yang Yuansheng was tidying up his clothes, he said to Tang Yarrow, It's time for Hua Mountain to change. You brat, dream on. Wang Runliang cursed, As long as I'm here, don't even think about getting what you want. Wang Runliang, you're quite loyal. Yang Yuansheng clapped his hands, but your subordinates might not be so loyal. As soon as he said that, a lot of Earth Sword sect experts gathered around Yang Yuansheng, ready to be used by him. What? Wang Runliang couldn't believe it. His fellow disciples were actually willing to be Yang Yuansheng's thugs. Master, you've always wanted the 4 major sword sects to become one, without any division or conflict. So, disciple helped you achieve it. Yang Yuansheng smiled and said, From today onwards, the 4 major sword sects will no longer exist. There will only be one Hua Mountain sect in Jianghu. And I, Yang Yuansheng, will be the sect leader of Hua Mountain, the true master of Shiyu. Why are you in such a hurry? Tang Yarrow couldn't help but sigh. For the position of sect leader, you're willing to kill each other. You're my eldest disciple. After 10 years, when I'm old, the sect leader position will naturally be yours. What a nice way to put it. Yang Yuansheng sneered, you only have Chen Junhua in your heart. Sooner or later, you'll hand over Hua Mountain to Chen Junhua. No matter how much effort I put into Hua Mountain, it'll be useless. It'll all go to someone else. You're wrong about that. Tang Yarrow said honestly, in my heart, only you are the new sect leader of Hua Mountain. Although Junwo's swordsmanship is outstanding, he's simple and not suitable to be the sect leader. But you're different. You're steady and know how to manage. Plus, you're able to control your fellow disciples. So I've always wanted to leave the sect leader position to you. Unfortunately, I've misjudged you. What's the point of saying all this now? Young Yuansheng seemed to tremble slightly, but he quickly calmed down. This sword conference will be your funeral. Dream on. Chen Junwo carried his heavy sword and slowly walked to the front. With me here, who can harm sect master? Third junior brother, I know your swordsmanship is powerful, but I'm afraid you won't be able to help us today. With that, young Yuansheng pointed at Xia Ya. You usually treat her like a younger sister. Today, you can put her to good use. Men, bring Xia Yi here. With that said, the two experts of the Shenzhen sect immediately flew towards Xia Yi from the left and right. Xia, who was still in a daze. She couldn't believe this shocking change. At this moment, Li Fan's figure appeared above the two swordsmen. At the same time, he clasped his hands on the heads of the two swordsmen and pressed their heads down. His body dropped down and knocked their heads onto the ground. Bang bang. With two muffled sounds, the two of them fainted. Xiao Hua, it's different from what you said. Why is Mount Hua not peaceful at all? It's probably on Brother Li's side. Fuck. Li Fan was so angry that he grinned. He was not a jinx. What do you mean by on my side? Li Fan, you're an outsider, yet you want to meddle in my Mount Hua's business? Yang Yuansheng looked at Li Fan and narrowed his eyes. I advise you not to get involved in this mess. Be careful not to lose your life. You don't have to worry about me. My life is tough. Li Fan had a smile on his face as he looked at Yang Yuansheng with a playful expression. You're quite unlucky. You've been planning for many years to rope in so many experts, right? I'm sorry, but you met me. You're unlucky. You. I don't care about you. Yang Yuansheng's gaze landed on the sword protecting Elder. Elder ran. I'll be troubling you. Leave it to me. The sword protecting Elder soared into the air. In the air, he directly thrusted his sword towards Li Fan. Mount Hua sword technique, Azure Dragon rises. This sword protecting Elder's internal energy was at least at the peak of strength. His sword technique was also very outstanding. However, Li Fan did not have any fear. He waited for the Guardian Sword Elder's sword to stab in front of him. Then, he suddenly stretched out his hand and caught the sword with only 3 fingers. Mount Hua sword technique was not like Murong's sword technique. It was full of sword chi. That was why Li Fan could use the great sage picking star to capture the sword. The sword protecting Elder was obviously stunned. But Li Fan's other hand grabbed the sword protecting Elder's collar and pulled him down. Using his shoulder as a weapon, the sword protecting Elder's waist directly hit his shoulder and then pressed down. Crack. The sword protecting Elder's spine made a cracking sound. Obviously, it was broken by Li Fan. Bear King Cauldron, change. Li Fan's 7 Heroes Fist was not just in the category of ancient martial arts. He had also integrated some modern fighting techniques into it. All rivers run into the sea. Li Fan's strange and brutal moves had truly frightened the others. That was the sword protecting Elder, but he was defeated by the little tyrant, Li Fan, in one move. The sword protecting Elder has failed. Yang Yuansheng berated, 4 black-clothed elders, it's up to you. Let the new sect leader see the abilities of us 4 brothers. The 4 elders of the Shenzhen sect immediately walked out. The 4 of them looked exactly the same, so they should be quadruplets. The 4 of them were of one mind and rushed towards Li Fan in unison. Then, they surrounded Li Fan in the middle and began to circle around him. 4 swords seemed like they would pierce into Li Fan's body at any time. Little junior brother, be careful. At this time, Xia, who also came to his senses and could not help but remind Li Fan, these 4 people are very powerful. The 4 talents sword formation they formed is flawless and extremely powerful. Thank you for your reminder, senior sister. Just as Li Fan said that, the 4 of them suddenly stepped forward together, their treasured swords stabbing towards Li Fan in unison. However, Li Fan's body directly jumped up, twisted in the air, and pressed down on the four people's treasured swords with both hands. Then, he separated his legs and kicked the heads of the two elders, causing the two of them to lose their vision and fall down. Li Fan's body was in the air, then he turned around and slapped another elder's head, pressing down on his head and ruthlessly smashing his body onto the ground. At the same time, Li Fan's knee pressed down on the elder's neck, causing him to suffocate. In the blink of an eye, Li Fan had directly knocked down 3 elders. The remaining one was unable to form the 4 talents sword formation. He stared blankly at Li Fan from the side, feeling a little silly. Li Fan stood up and walked towards him. Only then did the elder come to his senses and hurriedly brandished his treasured sword, trying to force Li Fan to retreat. Chapter 424. Li Fan first used Crane Hand and slapped the elder's sword away. At the same time, he used White Crane Nod with his other hand and hit the elder's temple on his chest, directly knocking the last elder unconscious. The people of Mount Hua were all shocked. What kind of strength does Li Fan have to be able to defeat the 4 black-clothed elders so easily? It's a bit like a dream. Most importantly, what kind of martial art is this kid using? Why is it so strange? It seems like I've never seen it before. I heard that this little overlord Li Fan created a martial art called 7 Heroes Fist. Could this be his 7 Heroes Fist? Everyone don't be afraid, he's only one person. Yang Yuansheng felt that everyone's momentum had weakened. This was not a good sign. He immediately pointed at Li Fan and shouted, "Brothers, let's attack together. No matter who kills him, they will obtain the title of Little Overlord." The title of Jiang, who was indeed very attractive. Yang Yuansheng's words resonated with everyone. Those who were willing to follow him were all experts with ambition. At this moment, the disciples of Earth Sword faction, Shenzhen faction, Huangzhen faction and even a few Heavenly Sword faction could not hold back and pounced towards Li Fan. Over 100 swordsmen, over 100 swords, all pointed at Li Fan, as if they wanted to cut him into pieces. Heavens, there are too many people. Xia, who could not help but worry, junior brother, quickly run, senior sister, don't worry, I have my ways. Li Fan retreated a few steps. A few hundred meters behind him was the buried sword pool of Mount Hua. Li Fan took a deep breath and entered the heaven-swallowing toad state. Suddenly, a tremor came from the buried sword pool in the distance. Those swordsmen who were preparing to attack were all stunned. What happened to the buried sword pool? 3,000. World. Li Fan suddenly roared. His voice was like a deep and resounding bell. Meanwhile, the dense mass of swords in the burial sword pool behind him suddenly trembled, and then they were pulled out from the soil and floated into the air. Then, they flew behind Li Fan and floated there like a huge wall of sword. Li Fan used his 3,000 worlds to forcefully pull these swords to his side. All the Huashan disciples were shocked. Even Tang Yarrow broke out in a cold sweat when he saw this scene. Unbelievable. Come on, let's fight. Li Fan provoked loudly. Those disciples looked at each other. More than 100 people gathered their courage and charged at Li Fan together. Li Fan stretched out his hand and pointed. The internal energy of the sky-swallowing toad was unleashed to the extreme. There were at least 1,000 treasured swords that immediately flew towards those disciples like rain. Dang dang dang. The disciples of Mount Hua bitterly resisted the rain of swords. Many disciples could not withstand it and were injured by the rain of sword. Heavens. As for Xia Hu, he was also dumbfounded. The day before, his junior brother could not even take out a single sword. But today, he actually pulled out all the treasured sword. After the rain of swords passed, there were only a dozen or so disciples of Mount Hua who were barely able to stand. They were also covered in injuries. Their bodies were filled with treasured swords, proof of the shocking scene just now. Who can stop me? With a loud shout from Li Fan, those few disciples of Mount Hua who were barely able to block the rain of swords turned around and ran. No one dared to go against Li Fan anymore. At this moment, Li Fan stood there like a god of war. One look at him was enough to make one's heart tremble with fear. Senior brother Yang, looks like you don't have many subordinates left. Li Fan looked at Yang Yuansheng and said, "Why don't senior brother Yang exchange a few moves with me? Sure. Unexpectedly, Yang Yuansheng really agreed. Now that things have come to this, it's time for me to display my strength. He slowly walked to the front and at the same time slowly pulled out his treasured sword. In the blink of an eye, he suddenly crossed the distance of 30 meters and arrived in front of Li Fan. At the same time, his sword chopped down towards Li Fan's head. Clang! Li Fan raised his right hand. In his palm was a ball of true qi, blocking Yang Yuansheng's sword. Bang! The ground under Li Fan's feet cracked. It could be seen how heavy Yang Yuansheng's sword was. However, Yang Yuansheng's sword was only a feint. His right hand behind his back circulated his power. His entire hand was like a red jade, incomparably red. His palm directly imprinted on Li Fan's chest. Puff! Li Fan actually spat out a mouthful of blood and retreated 2 steps. The clothes on his chest were torn to shreds, revealing a bloody palm print on his chest. At this moment, Li Fan felt as if there was a fire burning in his body. Even his blood was boiling, causing him extreme pain. Blood flame palm. Tang Yarrow's eyes almost popped out. Yang Yuansheng, you actually fell to such a state. Blood flame palm, this was the martial art of the Paragon sect. You actually learned the martial art of the Devil sect. You. Tang Yarrow's temper had always been good. Even when he was stabbed, he did not get angry. However, at this moment, he was actually so angry that he spat out a mouthful of blood. It was obvious that he was angry. Head sect leader, please take care. Wang Runliang hurriedly circulated his power to heal him. However, internal and external injuries could be healed, but heart injuries could not. Tang Yarrow's eyes were red. He pointed at Yang Yuansheng. I don't have a disciple like you. Ha ha ha, Tang Yao, what kind of sweet dream are you still having? Yang Yuansheng laughed. His smile was hideous and terrifying. Xia Hong looked at him. Looking at this eldest senior brother who was familiar in the past, but at this moment, he was extremely unfamiliar. He could not help but take 2 steps back. Was this still his eldest senior brother? You are not eldest senior brother. Who are you? Xia Hong asked innocently. I'm your eldest senior brother. Yang Yuansheng looked at Xia Hong and laughed sinisterly. I'm your real eldest senior brother. Little junior sister, come with me. You can be the sect leader's wife. He. I don't know you. Get lost. Xia Hong pushed Yang Yuansheng's hand away. Little junior sister, you refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit. Yang Yuansheng was enraged. He raised his red jade-like hand and was about to strike at Xia Hong. Thief, how dare you? Chen Junwo roared and threw the long sword in his hand at Yang Yuansheng. Clang. Yang Yuansheng deflected the heavy sword that flew over. He used all his hidden strength. He was still an expert who had reached the peak of perfection. Although Chen Junwo's sword technique was powerful, he was only an expert who had reached the peak of perfection. Back then, when Li Fan reached the peak of perfection, it was extremely difficult to defeat him. Those who submit to me will prosper, and those who oppose me will die. Little junior sister, go to hell and regret it. As Yang Yuansheng spoke, he slapped Xia Hong's forehead. Xia Hong had already closed her eyes in fear. She seemed to be waiting for death in despair. Chapter 425. Xia Yang was already waiting for death. She felt some despair in her heart. Where did the eldest senior brother who doted on her in the past? Tears rolled down from the corner of Xia Yang's eyes. But at this critical moment, Li Fan suddenly stood up and clashed with Yang Yuansheng's palm. Bang! The energy spread out, causing Li Fan and Yang Yuansheng to take a step back at the same time. It seemed that because of cultivating devil arts, Yang Yuansheng's inner force was very strong and was actually on par with him. Li Fan's qi churned as he began to circulate his qi to suppress it. Impossible. Yang Yuansheng was somewhat shocked. Your heart meridian was hit by my blood flame great palm. You can't circulate for at least a day or you will explode and die. Why are you fine? Take your time to guess. Li Fan actually switched meridians and entered the star Luo Divine Art's strength. Because he absorbed a lot of true qi last night, The Star Luo divine art already has the strength of 4 dragons. And Yang Yuanqing's strength is also around 4 dragons, so he is on par with Li Fan. Senior sister, stand behind me. Li Fan temporarily suppressed the power of the Blood Flame Great Palm, and for a day, he can only use the Star Luo divine art to fight. The Star Luo divine art's mental cultivation method is different, so most of the 7 Hero Fists moves are not suitable. But the Star Luo divine art's palm technique only has 1 defensive move, Vajra. But this is not difficult for Li Fan. Even if he can't use the 7 Hero Fist, he still has many fighting techniques that he can use. One technique connects 10,000 techniques. Still trying to be a hero in the face of death. Eat another palm of mine. Yang Yuanqing stepped forward and once again slapped at Li Fan with a large handprint. Li Fan coldly snorted as his true qi quickly revolved in his body. The speed of the Star Luo divine art's true qi is also twice as fast as the 7 Hero Fists. For example, if Li Fan was a 1.5L engine before, now he is a 3.0L engine. His true qi instantly reached the position of his palm. Facing Yang Yuanqing's palm, he slapped it. Bang! The ground under their feet cracked and Li Fan's palm emitted a golden red radiance. King Kong! Yang Yuanqing felt as if his power had hit a wall, and this wall even reflected his power back. Li Fan did not move an inch, but Yang Yuanqing himself flew backwards. His feet landed on the ground and he slid for a distance. He spat out a mouthful of blood. He had been injured by his own blood flame palm print. What kind of skill is this? This was the first time Yang Yuanqing had seen such a palm technique. He endured his injuries and questioned Li Fan. None of your business. Li Fan suddenly stepped forward and lashed out with his leg, ruthlessly lashing at Yang Yuanqing's body. Yang Yuanqing raised his sword and barely managed to block it. Clang! Yang Yuanqing's sword was broken, and he himself was sent flying back to the observatory. Die, thief! Chen Junhua grabbed the other sword and aimed it at Yang Yuanqing's neck. Stop! However, Tang Yarrow stopped this favored child of Mount Hua. Sect leader, this thief went against the flow and damaged the foundation of Mount Hua. Are we still going to let him live? Chen Junhua looked at Yang Yuanqing, who was lying on the ground with disheveled hair, and could not help but ask the head sect leader. He can be unjust, but I cannot be heartless. Tang Yarrow sighed lightly, cripple his martial arts and let him go down the mountain. Yes, Chen Junhua nodded. At this moment, Yang Yuanqing, who was lying on the ground, suddenly bounced up and kicked Chen Junhua away. His face was sinister, and his palm print grabbed towards Tang Yarrow's throat. You dare! Wang Runliang suddenly raised his sword and pierced it into Yang Yuanqing's chest. Yang Yuanqing covered the sword, took 2 steps back and slowly fell to the ground. This way, no one will remember me. Very good. After saying this, he finally closed his eyes. Big! Senior brother, Xia Yi, who was kneeling at a distance, seeing this scene, felt a slight pain in her heart. Why? Why did he do this? Xia Yi cried non-stop, while Li Fan stood there, feeling that he could understand Yang Yuanqing. If he can't live a grand life, then die a grand death. Li Fan let out a long sigh. The people of Jianghu each have their own path. Yang Yuanqing was dead, and those Mount Hua disciples who rebelled with him were also defeated by Li Fan. Those who were lucky enough to be alive also surrendered one after another. The sword duel on Mount Hua ended like a farce. The 2 sect leaders of Shenzhen and Huangjian saw that the situation was not good and fled in panic. Tang Yarrow indeed had a Buddha's heart. He did not stop them and let them go. Young hero Li, thank you so much this time. After a fierce battle, Mount Hua's vitality was greatly damaged, and Tang Yarrow himself also suffered some injuries. However, he ignored his injuries and kept thanking Li Fan. If not for young hero Li today, I'm afraid Mount Hua would really be in trouble. I only promised Lil Hua to protect senior sister. Li Fan smiled. It's nothing, sect leader Tang, you don't have to be so polite with me. Li Fan thought for a moment, then said, but this time, the devil cult has already infiltrated into Mount Hua. Sect leader Tang should be more careful and clear some of the black sheep out of Mount Hua. Even if they were tortured by the devil cult, I think they were just temporarily bewitched. Tang Yarrow said, "In Mount Hua, I will strengthen the teaching. True brotherly love and the paragon sword Dao will wake them up. This Tang Yarrow is really a good person. Alright, since that's the case, I should also leave." Li Fan said, "Your sect will probably need to rest for a period of time. I won't disturb you. Stay for 2 more days." Tang Yarrow patted Li Fan's shoulder. "You were hit by my evil disciple's palm. Young hero should also be injured. Young hero, you should treat Mount Hua as your home. It won't be too late to leave after you have a good rest. Then it would be impolite for me to refuse." Li Fan was indeed injured. It would be good to rest in Mount Hua. It would be good to leave after the injury of the big handprint was completely healed. Good, good, good. Thank you again. I will definitely repay your kindness in the future. The two of them chatted for a long time, then Li Fan finally had time to leave the observatory and return to Chen Junhua's small wooden hut. But after staying in the wooden hut for a while, Li Fan heard bursts of crying outside, which drifted into his ears along with the wind, strangely panicking. He jumped out of the bed, walked out of the hut, and followed the crying. Finally, on a hill in the distance, he saw Xia who standing under a pine tree, crying non-stop. "Senior sister, do you want some tissues?" Li Fan hesitated for a long time, feeling that the cold wind was strong. If Xia who continued to cry, her beautiful face would be frozen. So he walked over, wanting to persuade her. Xia who turned around, threw herself into Li Fan's arms, and simply stuck to his chest, wailing loudly. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.